In 2014, an indie game developer promised the internet a very violent stealth anime game. The main character, Ayano Aishi, was tasked with her classmates inside a Japanese high school, all in order to win the affection of her beloved senpai. The idea was extremely strange and undeniably violent, but for some reason, people loved it. The concept quickly captured the internet's attention, and fans began eagerly waiting for the game to finally release. But there was just one problem. Over the years, the discussion around Yandere Simulator slowly stopped being about the game itself. Instead, it started becoming about the man behind it.
I, Eva X, humbly submit a toast to Nicholas Alexander.
This is Alexander Mahan, the developer of the game, known online as Yandere Dev, who was later accused of inappropriate interactions with a fan. As these allegations spread, people began digging deeper into his online history. Users uncovered a disturbing backlog of old accounts across various internet forums, where Yandere Dev had openly shared some deeply troubling views and fantasies. From writing about violent thoughts toward his own parents and making disturbing comments about to expressing fantasies about people he disliked while defending predatory behavior. And if you think the failure of Yandere Simulator is the biggest part of this story, trust us, that's only scratching the surface. Because the story of Yandere Dev goes much deeper than most people realize. Yandere Dev's real name is Alexander Mahan. He was born on June 30th, 1988, which makes him over 37 years old today. One thing that sets Alex's childhood apart is the fact that he was homeschooled by his parents from the age of 12. While Alex himself does not talk much about his homeschooling years online, there are people on platforms like Reddit who suggest that he may have been bullied during his time at school. According to these discussions, one particular bullying incident may have been serious enough that his parents decided to remove him from school entirely and begin homeschooling him. If that speculation is true, it would mean that Alex experienced a level of social isolation from a relatively young age, and like many teenagers in similar situations, he likely turned toward things like video games, anime, and the internet as a way to connect with the outside world. This is what Alex wrote about his childhood on a forum. I am 20 years old. From age 12 to 18, I had no friends, never went to any parties, never went on dates, never had any important life experiences, and never developed socially. I was homeschooled, and because I became so accustomed to staying in my house all day long and going through my daily routine, it eventually became almost impossible for me to consider leaving my house or breaking out of that routine. I adapted to one way of life so much that I became incapable of deviating from that reclusive lifestyle. From a very young age, Alex appeared to be deeply interested in anime and video games. These interests eventually influenced his career path as well, as he later pursued studies related to animation and video graphics. Now, the unusual part about all of this wasn't simply his interest in anime and gaming, it was the intensity of that interest. Because he lacked strong social connections during his teenage years, Alex began forming most of his interactions online with people who shared similar hobbies. He started joining different internet forums where fans discussed anime, games, and digital media. Over time, he began posting more frequently on these forums, often sharing his thoughts, ideas, and opinions with other users across different communities. The earliest known footprint of Alex on the internet dates back to when he was just 16 years old, while most people today know him by the name Yandere Dev. That wasn't the identity he originally used online. Instead, he first appeared on internet forums under the alias EvXFun. This account would later become permanently tied to Alex's online history, because it provides a glimpse into how he behaved and interacted with others, even in his early teenage years. The name EvXFun itself came from Alex's love for two classic anime series, Evangelion and Rahasfon. He combined parts of both titles to create the username. Using this alias, Alex joined multiple online communities. One of the earliest forums he is known to have joined was a site called animemusicvideos.org. He joined the forum sometime in 2004 and began asking users there for help with creating anime music videos. However, it quickly became clear that Alex was not very experienced with video creation at the time. Because of this, several members of the forum suggested that he first read the available guides before posting questions that were already answered in those resources. But strangely enough, Alex seemed to take offense to that suggestion. Instead of simply reading the guides, he proposed a new rule on the forum just one day after joining. In his post, he wrote, "Now, I don't mean to try to formally challenge the administrators with this topic, but I'd like to share some of my thoughts. Now, I haven't been here long, so I might be incorrect, but it seems like most of the time when someone asks a question, the responses they get are 1 or 2 lines long and contain no helpful information or answer to their question. They just say, 'Read the guide.' I think you should read the guide. Read the guide again. Sounds like someone hasn't read the guide yet. Is it just me, or does the existence of a guide make everyone lazy? In other words, Alex believed that other users should feel obligated to personally walk him through the entire process, rather than simply directing him toward the guides that already contained the answers he was looking for. He was a complete nuisance to this forum for most of the time he remained there. During his stay, Alex posted frequently and often filled the threads with his bizarre ideas and personal opinions. He openly expressed his intense fascination with anime, particularly characters from shows like Evangelion. But strangely enough, he also claimed that the same series had a deeply negative emotional effect on him. At one point, Alex even suggested that Evangelion had made him feel special. However, these posts were relatively mild compared to some of the other things he wrote on the forum. For example, Alex openly admitted that he preferred weak and submissive girls, because according to him, they would simply do whatever they were told. In another post, he expressed the idea that if he ever owned a robotic girlfriend, he would turn her into a rather than attempt to teach her anything about love or companionship. He also appeared to be particularly fascinated with life-sized anime dolls. In one of his posts, he wrote, "This reminds me of a guy who had a 2-foot-tall statue of Rei Ayanami. He said he bought it for $250, which sounds a lot better than what they seem to be charging for the doll up above. Man, I love seeing life-sized anime dolls." This comment is particularly unsettling in hindsight, considering that Alex later admitted to owning a life-size doll himself, which he reportedly dressed up as the character Zero Suit Samus. While on animemusicvideos.org, Alex also posted hot screen caps from anime. Even on threads that were known for pushing boundaries, some users felt that the images he shared went a bit too far. At the same time, Alex often shared his opinions about the media and censorship. He argued that showing violence, guns, drugs, and similar topics in online content would not desensitize children, and therefore should not be censored. Eventually, after spending roughly 2 years posting on the forum, the user known as Eva Xiphones quietly disappeared in 2006. Interestingly, the final disagreement that seemed to push him away from the platform wasn't related to his controversial posts or provocative images. Instead, it revolved around something much simpler. Alex had created his own website where he hosted a gallery comparing Rakshvan and Evangelion, two of his favorite anime series. However, many users on the forum disagreed with his comparisons and argued that his analysis was extremely surface level. Not long after that discussion, Alex simply signed off from the platform and moved on to other corners of the internet, places where he would continue sharing his personal frustrations, opinions, and increasingly controversial views. Between 2005 and 2009, Alex was also active on an online forum called Gaia Online. For those who may not know, Gaia was a very popular platform in the early 2000s. It attracted people who were interested in anime, video games, and internet culture. Users could create their own avatars, participate in discussions, and share their thoughts in a relatively anonymous and open environment. However, Alex did not seem to use Gaia primarily to discuss anime or gaming. Instead, he frequently used the platform to air his personal frustrations. Some of the things he wrote on that forum were so bizarre and uncomfortable that it is honestly difficult to understand how they went unnoticed for so long. One of the most common topics in Alex's posts was his frustration over not having a girlfriend. He repeatedly wrote about the fact that he had never been in a relationship and believed his chances of ever finding a girlfriend were extremely low. Post after post, he complained about how no girl seemed interested in him romantically and how he felt invisible to women. At one point, he even posted pictures of himself while discussing his appearance, writing, "I've been jokingly told several times that I look creepy or have a creepy face. I'm 20 years old, but no girl has ever flirted with me or told me that I am attractive, so I'm starting to feel that it is true. I think my face makes me look like a creepy, weird guy, so no one wants to get to know me or be around me." In another post, Alex openly admitted that he did not believe he had good looks, charisma, talent, or wealth, qualities he assumed were necessary to attract a girlfriend. Because of this, he concluded that his chances of ever finding one were essentially zero. His desperation during this time appeared to be quite intense. In one particularly strange post, Alex even claimed that he had asked his parents for a girlfriend as a birthday present. Posts like these were extremely common throughout his time on Gaia. He frequently created threads with titles such as "How to Get a Girlfriend," "Why Don't Girls Have Sympathy for Poor, Lonely, Girlfriendless Guys?" "If I had a girlfriend, all my problems would go away." "How do I approach girls?" "What bothers a girl?" "I am 19. Where do I go to meet girls?" A large percentage of his posts revolved around loneliness, rejection, and his frustration with not being able to form romantic relationships. But here's the thing. For someone who frequently described himself as a polite, misunderstood guy who simply wanted a girlfriend, Alex's comments about women were often surprisingly disrespectful. For example, in one post, he openly admitted to constantly staring at a girl's at school, he wrote, "So there is this girl at my school with really nice, I mean, wow, they are amazing. She just has such an incredible figure and such a beautiful. When she is in the room, I can't pay attention to anything else. I always stare at her when she is around." Reading something like that is uncomfortable enough on its own, but it also raises an obvious question. If Alex was openly admitting to behavior like this, it is not difficult to imagine how uncomfortable that girl might have felt if she noticed the constant staring. Funnily enough, Alex would say things like this online and then later rant about the fact that he was still a virgin. Most of the time, his argument for not being able to get a girlfriend was that he was simply ugly. The guy would literally post videos of himself on forums asking strangers to reassure him about his appearance. He constantly complained about the fact that he was not getting any attention from women, and he blamed it almost entirely on his face. What he seemed to fail to realize was a very basic possibility. Perhaps the problem was not that he had a creepy face, but that he had a deeply uncomfortable and personality. Need more proof of this? Take a look at some of the questions he posted online. In one thread, he asked things like, "Where can I meet a girl who I can ask, can I touch your b****s?" And she will say, "Sure." By this point in the timeline, Alex had become so desperate to lose his virginity that he began posting on websites like Craigslist and MySpace in search of partners for casual encounters. At this stage, he had essentially lost all hope of finding a traditional girlfriend. Instead, he started browsing MySpace for and people interested in casual relationships, hoping someone might offer him sex without any emotional commitment. He reportedly messaged several women there trying to initiate conversations. On platforms like Craigslist, he even posted personal ads. In one of those posts, he wrote, "I am shy, timid, and a little awkward. I am not handsome, witty, or charismatic, but I have been told that I am very sweet and kind-hearted. If your fantasy is to let a sad, lonely guy experience heaven for a few hours, then I'm your man." Initially, Alex seemed hopeful that someone might actually respond to his posts, but just a few days later he realized that was not happening at all. The responses he had hoped for simply never came. That realization quickly turned into bitterness, and he returned to complaining about his lonely life once again. At one point, he even wrote, "I don't see any girls volunteering to de-virginize me." These events appeared to send Alex into a deeper spiral of frustration. His desperation reached a new level, to the point where he began openly discussing the idea of paying for. He wrote, "Some people are unattractive, boring, have no charisma or wit, and are simply unappealing to the opposite every way. These people have absolutely no hope of ever finding a partner or having with another person, unless they pay for it. I don't believe it's shameful if these people pay for." If Alex had stopped there, the statement would have simply sounded like a sad reflection on his situation. But unfortunately, he continued the thread with a far more disturbing. He wrote, "After all, it's not as if they could ever have the normal way. For these people, there will never be any volunteers. There are only two options. Or pay for." What do you think? The fact that he even presented the first option is deeply unsettling, and as disturbing as this might sound, later parts of this story will reveal even more about Alex's mindset, and suggest that the way he thinks has not changed much at all, even after all these years. One of the creepiest moments from Alex's activity on this forum came when he actually messaged an underage girl, in his intense desperation for a relationship. He even went as far as posting a picture of the girl on the forum, openly admitting that he was drooling over her and sharing the message he had sent to her with other members. Well, people on the forum quickly realized that the girl was still in high school. Based on what users could gather from the information he shared, many believed that she was probably around 14 or 15 years old. Naturally, the members of the forum called him out almost immediately. Several users pointed out how inappropriate his behavior was, and suggested that he had probably scared the girl away with his actions. But unfortunately, that was far from the most disturbing thing Alex posted on the guide. When he was not complaining about being a virgin or describing himself as completely unappealing to women, Alex often used the forum to rant about his parents. He would frequently insult his mother online and speak about her in a very disrespectful way. His anger toward his parents appeared to be extremely intense. In one of the most infamous posts attributed to him, Alex even described violent fantasies about his father. Disturbingly, he did not stop there. In the same discussion, Alex also mentioned similar violent thoughts about his mother. When another forum user suggested that he could simply move out of his parents' house instead of entertaining such extreme ideas, Alex responded by saying that he could not survive on his own, and therefore had no choice but to continue living with them. However shocking these posts may sound, they were not the end of Alex's disturbing online behavior. From around 2004 onward, he became active on a variety of other online forums as well, the Orson Scott Card Forum, Newgrounds, and several other online communities. Across most of these spaces, the pattern remained largely the same. Alex would complain about not having a girlfriend, rant about still being a virgin, and frame these issues as if they were the greatest tragedies of his life. But there was one particular forum where Alex appeared to be even more aggressive, more open, and far more disturbing than usual. We are talking about the Losers message board. His posts there were so extreme that even other members of the community were visibly uncomfortable with the opinions he expressed. For instance, he once created a thread. Inside the thread, Alex discussed the character Jody from the webcomic Losers. He described the character as and explained that her behavior bothered him deeply. According to Alex, his childhood had been very sheltered, which meant he had grown up believing that women were generally passive in relationships. When he later discovered that women could also approach men or openly express interest, he claimed that the realization caused him serious emotional distress. Ever since then, he began expressing strong resentment toward women he considered or overly. He wrote, "To me, being a is on par with being someone who commits terrible crimes and sins. It bars me from being able to love or respect that person, and I cannot see being a as just being human." On top of that, inside the post, Alex posed questions like, why do girls think that good thing? Girls seem to want to have bodies or clothing, or have guys think that they're I don't understand the purpose of this. He also wrote, and why do girls seem to like the idea of the big so much? This line of thinking comes across as pretty hypocritical when you consider the things he had posted not long before on the AMV forum. There, he openly admitted to staring at a girl's chest at school, and even complained when she began wearing clothing that covered it up. In other words, the same guy who could not stop ogling someone's body was now pretending to be confused about why anyone would want to appear attractive. But unfortunately, this wasn't the end of Alex's increasingly incel-like behavior on the forum. At one point, a female user commented on his thread and casually mentioned that she had just slept with her boyfriend in a car. That single statement was enough to set Alex off. He responded by saying that the comment disgusted him and made him want to vomit. On another occasion, Alex described his idea of a perfect girlfriend on the forum. His description was unsettling, to say the least. In his own words, he wrote, "I have always wanted a girlfriend who acted youthful, babyish, innocent, naive, childlike, pure, uncomplicated, unsophisticated, trusting, charming, pleasant, sweet, lovable, cute, cherubic, malleable." Most people on the forum were naturally disturbed by comments like this. His posts started attracting more and more negative attention, and many users began openly criticizing him for the things he was saying. Eventually, people became so tired of his constant rants that they would simply tell him to shut the hell up. But of course, that did not stop Alex. He continued creating new threads, repeatedly trying to convince others to agree with his belief that s***s were morally wrong. He would write more enraging things like, "If a girl's experienced, she is off limits to me. She may as well not exist because she is not a choice, so she does not make me angry. But a girl who is very experienced is not only not a choice, but also something that disgusts me because of how I thought the world was supposed to be." Once again, the hypocrisy here is hard to ignore. At the very same time he was posting comments like this, Alex had already been begging experienced women on platforms like Craigslist and MySpace to sleep with him. There was also another comment where Alex argued that it was actually sexist to say, "You would never hit a girl." According to him, that statement implied that women were weaker than men, which he claimed was discriminatory. By this point, the members of the Losers message board had become so exhausted with arguing against him that many of them started trolling him instead. Rather than debating his opinions seriously, some users began asking him increasingly provocative questions just to see how far he would go. One user asked him directly, were the school justified? Seriously, be honest and don't sugarcoat because you are afraid of the mean forum members. Unfortunately, Alex almost always took the bait. He seemed more than willing to share his extreme opinions whenever he was given the opportunity. In response to that question, he wrote that he believed school shootings were acceptable as long as the victims were bullies. According to him, he had no problem with that scenario. In another discussion, he even said that if there were a button that could instantly all the mean people in the world, he believed every good person would press it because it would make society better. Unsurprisingly, comments like these were met with outrage from other users on the forum. But perhaps one of the most disturbing posts Alex ever made involved his idea of something he called a license. In that thread, he argued that a single age of consent could never properly apply to all human beings. Instead, he proposed a completely different system. According to Alex, people should be required to pass a test that would determine whether they were mentally ready for activity. If they passed this test, they would receive what he called a license. The most alarming part of this proposal was a suggestion that these licenses could potentially be granted to individuals as young as 14 years old. Of course, after all of this, Alex became a massive pain in everyone's on the forum. People literally started calling him out on a daily basis, and not always in the nicest way. The constant criticism clearly got under his skin, and it didn't take long for things to explode. On March 23, 2007, he created a thread titled, "Everyone in this forum is an idiot," where he basically blew up and threw a full-on tantrum over people refusing to understand his point of view. In the thread, he ranted about the community, complained about how everyone misunderstood him, and dramatically announced that he was leaving the forum for good. He wrote, "I'm so through with all of you. There's not even a reason to continue typing. What's important is that I kicked your ass, now I'm over this worthless hole of a forum." But as we've already seen, Alex simply couldn't survive without posting his thoughts online. He constantly needed some kind of outlet for his frustrations, his ideas, and all the bizarre opinions he wanted to share with the world. And while online forums were one way he expressed himself, there was another place where he could really let his imagination run wild: writing fan fiction. Alex had actually joined fanfiction.net much earlier, back in August of 2005. Between 2005 and 2012, Alex wrote a total of 7 fan fiction stories on the website under the username Evixfon. These stories were based on popular franchises like Resident Evil, Metroid, Legend of Zelda, Fallout, and Soul Calibur. But what really made them stand out wasn't the fandom they were based on, it was the themes. Many of Alex's stories revolved around extremely disturbing topics like psychological trauma. His most infamous fanfiction to date is a massive Soul Calibur story titled I Am Your... And when we say massive, we mean massive. The story is about 350,000 words long and spans 60 chapters. To put that into perspective, the entire first Harry Potter book is only around 76,000 words. Even the first Game of Thrones novel sits at roughly 292,000 words. So Alex's fanfiction is actually longer than the first book in the Game of Thrones series, and more than 4 times the length of the first Harry Potter novel. In other words, this wasn't just some short, edgy fanfic. It was basically the size of a full-length fantasy novel. The story itself is extremely graphic and contains explicit content throughout. Eventually, people on the site started confronting him about it. In response, Alex defended the content by arguing that dark subject matter existed in mainstream fiction as well, pointing to authors like George R.R. Martin as an example. Years later, after people discovered that Evixfon was actually Yandere Dev, Alex quietly updated the bio on his fanfiction account in 2020. In it, he acknowledged the nature of his old writing, saying, "Have I written dark stories? Yes. Have I written stories with mature themes, meant to be read by adults only? Yes. Were people are forced into in my stories? Sometimes. Have I written stories about the psychological trauma that a victim goes through? Yes. Well, we consider this explanation nothing but complete. But honestly, what kind of accountability can you expect from a guy who literally created an entire Twitter account dedicated to video game babes?" Around 2010, Alex briefly tried to dabble in journalism by contributing to a small website called Examiner.com. During his time there, he wrote several articles about what he called video game babes in LA. These pieces mostly focused on female characters in video games, and often came across as pretty creepy and uncomfortable to read. But he didn't stop there. Alex also created a Twitter account under the same title, where he would regularly post about what he considered the hottest and sexiest female characters in gaming. And some of the things he posted there were honestly disturbing. At this point, it was already becoming clear that Alex's behavior online had gone far beyond just being strange or controversial. But what most people didn't realize at the time was that his personal interactions on the internet were slowly drifting into much more concerning territory. Unknown to the public, around 2009, he had already begun communicating with an underage girl who went by the username Cicefs. This situation traces back to the early streaming craze around 2009. Twitch didn't exist yet, so gamers used a variety of smaller websites and platforms to live stream their gameplay. Alex, who at the time had better gaming equipment than most hobbyists, managed to build a noticeable audience fairly quickly. According to a 2014 thread discussing his early online activity, the first time Alex ever streamed was in January 2009. Another major reason his streams managed to attract viewers wasn't just his setup, but also the way he constantly promoted them. Alex would repeatedly post links to his live streams across multiple forums and platforms to bring more people into his broadcasts. He did this so frequently that forum moderators eventually had to step in and report him for constant spamming. On top of that, while there are no surviving video clips of his streams from that era, there are a few written witness accounts that paint a pretty unflattering picture of how he behaved during them. According to those accounts, he was no better at gaming than DSP. He apparently struggled with games, sometimes used pirated copies, frequently blocked viewers who tried to give him advice, rage quit streams when things weren't going his way, and creeped on women. One of the girls who later came forward in 2014 accusing Alex of taking advantage of her as a was named Sisefs. She published a blog post on Tumblr where she described in detail everything that she claimed happened between her and Alex back in 2009. In her post, she explained that as a teenager she struggled with serious self-esteem issues and lived in what she described as a toxic household. Because of this, she often turned to the internet to find validation and emotional support. She also said she frequently visited Alex's streams, and once he realized she was a girl, his behavior toward her changed dramatically. After a while of chatting on MSN, they formed a relationship. According to Sisefs, Alex knew very well that Sisefs was 14 years old. Despite knowing that, he asked for from her, forced her to have video Skype, and engaged her in multiple conversations. Later, Sisefs published a detailed blog recounting her experiences. She included images of herself with "I love Ever" written on her fingers, photos of her live streaming, and a number of screenshots from Alex's streams. While the screenshots did not provide definitive evidence of the claims she made, as there were no explicit chat logs or direct proof, they did confirm that Sisefs was a real participant in Alex's live streams at the time. Many observers found her account credible, in part because Alex reportedly changed his explanation of events multiple times over the years. It's also important to note that when this story resurfaced online, Alex was already publicly known as Yandere Dev, and development of Yandere Simulator was well underway. His established presence in the gaming community meant the situation attracted considerable attention. Throughout 2015, Alex publicly denied the allegations, maintaining that nothing inappropriate had occurred. Initially, he said this: "Sisefs was a girl who flirted with me online. I flirted with her back. She seemed cool at first, but it turned out that she wasn't cool at all. She did a bunch of bad stuff, like she lied about her age, and she started a website to give people a place to say bad things about me, and her parents took away her internet privileges because she was taking pictures of herself and sending them out to people. She sent me her pictures, and she sent them to like 100 other people too, and somehow this means Evexef on request from minors. I deleted all of her photos as soon as I discovered that she had been lying about her age the whole time. She was not a good person at all, and I'm very glad that I don't know her anymore." Later on, he completely eradicated the term minor from his story and wrote, "The second allegation is that I am a offender. These accusations are almost too silly to dignify with a response, but I will respond nonetheless. About 6 years ago, I knew a young woman who did a lot of inappropriate things in order to get people to pay attention to her. One of the things she did was to send pictures of herself to a lot of people. I was one of the people to whom she sent pictures. Months later, I learned that she was too young to be doing that sort of thing. I deleted her pictures immediately." He also emphasized that he never said she was a minor. He just said that she was a young woman and too young to be doing that. He also changed the fact that he knew her and flirted with her to the fact that she just happened to send everybody her notes. His refusal to stick to one story made him sound guilty as hell. Then there's this screenshot that came from his own team member who was working on Yandere Simulator with him, where he clearly accepts that the girl was underage, and he received notes from her and deleted them. Well, despite Sisefs not providing much proof of Alex's misconduct, the internet largely believes she is telling the truth, mainly because Alex is not exactly new to lying. He has denied other things in the past as well, which later turned out to be true. For instance, he once denied owning a doll. From his AMV days, it was already pretty clear that Alex was obsessed with the idea of owning a doll. He even posted on Reddit a few years ago, asking whether he should consider buying a real doll. Well, he finally got to act on that fantasy in 2014. Reportedly, he bought a doll that year, and it arrived sometime in 2015. After that, he joined a website called Doll Forum, where he regularly posted pictures of the doll and referred to her as my waifu. There are even a couple of pictures of the doll dressed up as Zero Suit Samus. When it first became known that Alex owned a doll, he immediately came forward and denied ever owning one. Well, internet detectives got to work almost immediately. They entered the email address Alex had used across multiple forums into Doll Forum, and boom! They discovered that the account on Doll Forum actually belonged to him. Not only that, but there were also several posts suggesting that Alex had actually broken his first doll within 24 hours and possibly bought another one in 2018, using money from his Patreon. Speaking of all this, there's also a voice clip of Alex shouting, "Anything can be a sex doll when you're creative enough."
Anything is a doll if you're creative enough.
With everything that later came out, that audio clip definitely did not age well. Interestingly, while all of this was happening, Alex was slowly trying to build a name in game development. Around 2009, Alex actually graduated from Santa Monica College, earning an Associate of Arts degree in Animation, Interactive Technology, Videographic, and Special Effects. After completing college in 2009, Alex joined a company called Kung Fu Factory and began working there. On paper, this might sound fairly impressive. However, the digital footprints he left scattered across various online forums tell a very different story. While Alex lists a degree in animation on his LinkedIn, he later admitted on forums that he learned almost nothing during college, and essentially wasted 3 years there. According to his own statements, he believed he was much better at coding than anything related to animation. Alex has also said that he largely taught himself, programming through the software GameMaker, and that he later improved his skills while working at a gaming company. In October 2013, shortly before he began developing Yandere Simulator, Alex made the following claim. "I worked at a video game company for 3 years. I was a programmer for 2 of those years." However, that statement doesn't seem to fully reflect the reality of his work there. According to archived discussions and threads about his employment, Alex initially handled relatively minor tasks at the studio, such as syncing subtitles to cutscenes, assisting with localization work, and tweaking small gameplay variables. He only reportedly took on lead programming roles for a couple of smaller mobile games. Later leaked chats also showed Alex admitting that he wasn't even a full-time employee at Kung Fu Factory. But did that stop Alex from continuing to make games? Not really. After leaving Kung Fu Factory in 2014, he began working on several independent projects of his own. One of these was a game called Booby Clicker. Another project was titled Super Deep Throat 3D. However, one of his most infamous early projects was a fighting game prototype, because it ended up sparking a strange one-sided rivalry with Mike Z. If you're unfamiliar, Mike Z is the programmer who created the well-known fighting game Skullgirls. Ironically, Alex actually saw Mike Z as an inspiration. At the beginning of 2014, after creating his fighting game prototype, Alex joined Mike Z's IRC chat and showed him his project. Over the course of about a month, Mike offered suggestions to Alex about improving the project, instead of giving him any ass pats. But the conversations quickly became frustrating. Mike pointed out several problems with Alex's code and gave him advice. However, Alex often ignored those suggestions while still hoping Mike would be impressed by the game. Eventually, Alex became upset when the feedback wasn't the praise he expected. Some of his responses became quite dramatic. At one point, he wrote, "Everyone hates my fighting game, it's the opposite of what I envisioned." In another message, he said, "Nothing has validity anymore. I started making a game because of Mike Z," and then he'd personally shat on it. Meanwhile, Mike continued trying to give advice as politely as possible, but after weeks of the same arguments, his patience started wearing thin. At one point, he replied, "Well, yeah, that's because I've been giving you advice for the last month, and you've been telling me I'm wrong." The situation became so frustrating that Mike apparently assumed Alex must have been a teenager. In reality, Alex was already 25 years old at the time. In the end, Alex's refusal to accept criticism irritated Mike and left Alex feeling deeply resentful. Because he didn't receive the praise he wanted, he became extremely bitter about the entire interaction. On April 22, 2014, Alex created a forum thread where he ranted about how Mike Z, someone he once admired, had criticized his game, and told him that code written like that would never get him hired. At the end of the post, Alex wrote, "I turn my depression into a burning hatred that fuels my desire to develop indie games." This was posted on the video gaming section of the 4chan forum, the same platform where Alex pitched the idea of his next game, Yandere Simulator, not long ago. We can safely say that Yandere Simulator to this day remains one of the main topics of discussion and trolling directed toward Alex. There are many reasons for things to be this way. For instance, Alex presented the idea for this game to the 4chan forum on April 1st, 2014, but even after 10 years, the game is still not complete and appears far from being finished. When Alex initially proposed this idea, however, the reaction on the forum was surprisingly positive. Even to Alex's own surprise, many forum members were genuinely excited about the concept. They waited for updates, offered their own suggestions, and actively rooted for the project. At this stage, he seemed willing to do almost anything to build an audience for the game. Just a few days after proposing the idea, he was already creating additional threads on the forum to share updates. He also launched a blog where he began posting regular development updates. He even created polls to ask people for suggestions and feedback about the game. By April 4th, 2014, he had already created a Yandere Dev YouTube channel, where he uploaded a prototype of the game. The video showed the main character, Ayano Aishi, targeting her first victim. After that, he continued uploading more videos to update people on the progress of the project. There was one problem, though. From the very beginning, it did not seem like Alex fully knew how he was going to build the game. Even 3 months into development, he admitted that he did not have any proper design documents outlining how the project would work. On top of that, he acknowledged that many of the game's assets, such as 3D models and animations, were purchased from online asset stores. The school environment used in the game was also something he found for free online. He even mentioned that he was considering asking volunteers from the community to contribute additional assets if they were willing to help. So, from the very start, Yandere Simulator relied heavily on borrowed assets and volunteer contributions. Initially, Alex also expressed discomfort with the idea of creating a Patreon or accepting donations for the project, saying that doing so would make him feel guilty. However, sometime later he appeared to reconsider that stance, and posted the following question online. Hypothetically speaking, if I made a Patreon for myself, would you guys call me a greedy, money-grubbing sellout, or would that actually be understandable? After this, he eventually created a Patreon. By that point, Alex had already released a very simple playable prototype of the game, and many people were eager to see him actually finish it. In September 2014, however, Alex suggested that a full release might not happen until the following year. He explained that Yandere Simulator was only a pet project, and that he was working 2 real jobs at the time. Around this period, he continued returning to the forum every other week, sharing small updates about the game and asking users for advice or suggestions. But there was something most people on the forum did not realize yet. Evexefon and Yandere Dev were the same person. That changed in January 2015 when a forum user exposed the connection by posting a DeviantArt link titled Komisch Yandere Simulator for Evexefon. This immediately revealed that the person developing Yandere Simulator was the same Alex who had previously been active online under the Evexefon name. After that, the thread quickly turned hostile. Many users began calling him out and criticizing both him and the project. One commenter wrote that the game was hard, not only because of its cringeworthy design, but also because of its cringeworthy creator. Another user complained that Alex constantly relied on the forum for help, saying he can't stop asking people for advice, and accusing him of being unable to come up with his own ideas while trying to pander to V as much as possible. All of this happened around the same time that the doll controversy surrounding Alex began circulating online, which only intensified the trolling directed at him on the forum. In February 2015, one of the 3D modelers working with Alex on Yandere Simulator decided to leave the project. According to statements he made at the time, he became uncomfortable after discovering Alex's earlier online activity under the Evexefon username. He also expressed concern about the overall direction the game seemed to be taking. Despite these internal issues, Yandere Simulator was beginning to receive mainstream attention on YouTube. Around July 18, 2015, PewDiePie uploaded one of his early gameplay videos featuring the game, introducing it to millions of viewers. Because PewDiePie was already one of the most influential gaming creators on the platform, his video immediately exposed the project to a massive audience. Once he played the game, a wave of other large creators followed. The game's bizarre premise made it perfect for reaction-style YouTube content. The Starnage mechanics, exaggerated anime tone, and often unintentionally comedic bugs made the game extremely watchable. In many ways, Alex had anticipated that something like this might happen. The game's concept was so unusual that it was almost designed to attract attention online. As more creators discovered it, the audience for Yandere Simulator grew rapidly. This surge in visibility had a direct impact on Alex's own platform. His Yandere Dev YouTube channel quickly gained hundreds of thousands of followers, and eventually crossed into millions of subscribers. The project now had a large fan base. With this growing attention came a new opportunity: streaming. Alex began experimenting with live streams on YouTube, sometimes streaming for long stretches of time while interacting with viewers. At the same time, his original 4chan threads had become increasingly hostile, with many users openly mocking both him and the highly sexualized features of the game. Instead, Alex continued engaging with audiences on other forums, including 8chan, where he defended some of the more controversial features in the game. By this point, Alex was earning a considerable amount of income from multiple sources. His Patreon, YouTube channel, and the constant exposure generated by large creators meant that money was coming in, even though the game itself remained unfinished. For many observers, this period marked a noticeable shift in priorities. While development updates continued, Alex was also spending large amounts of time streaming and interacting with his audience, sometimes for hours at a time. And when people questioned him about the game, he would be very pissed off. In one of his threads, he said, "When I'm playing video games, like a normal person enjoying leisure activities after his workday ends, people are asking me questions about Yandere Simulator, and I'm answering. It is like a non-stop Q&A session. There's not a single hour of my day not affected by Yandere Simulator." Well, his frustration is apparent here. But soon after, it bubbled into something that people like to call the email saga. At this point, Yandere Simulator heavily relied on volunteers, and Alex was actively recruiting new people to help with the project. To make that possible, he publicly shared his email address so interested volunteers could contact him. However, the outcome was not what he expected. According to Alex, he began receiving a huge influx of emails. For some reason, he insisted that he personally had to go through every single one of them. He began writing heated blog posts explaining how this constant stream of emails was affecting the production of the game. In one post, he claimed that from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., he was doing nothing but answering emails. And we are not talking about just 1 or 2 posts. For nearly an entire year, he kept publishing new blog entries trying to address the issue. He repeatedly described the situation as a major obstacle to development, yet the problem persisted, largely because he refused to adopt solutions that people suggested to him. For example, he did not want to hire someone to manage his inbox, even though the game was already receiving donations. He also did not want to create a dedicated forum or structured system where volunteers could submit their work. Instead, most of the time he simply moaned about the overwhelming number of emails he was receiving. Eventually, the situation became so severe that he frequently cited emails as the main reason he could not work on the game itself. In one blog post, he wrote, "I hate to say this, but it is looking extremely likely that I might not be able to implement very much new content into the game on July 15th, because I now spend 90% of my time writing emails and 10% of my time writing code." What made things even worse was that on the 2-year anniversary of Yandere Simulator being in development, instead of delivering a major update about the game's progress, Alex uploaded this video.
As of today, Yandere Simulator has been in development for 2 years. Happy birthday, Yandere-chan. I think that this is the appropriate time to make a video about the biggest obstacle that I am facing. If this one obstacle could be removed, I would have much more time to work on the game, and the game's development would go by much faster. The problem is email. This is a problem that I have mentioned various times in previous videos and blog posts. You're probably sick of hearing about it by now. I'm certainly sick of talking about it. I'd love to stop bringing up this subject, but that can only happen when it stops being the biggest problem I'm facing. I receive an avalanche of emails every single day.
Well, sometime after this fiasco, more persistent and far more damaging, problems than an influx of emails were waiting for Alex. On January 22nd, 2016, Twitch actually banned Yandere Simulator from being streamed on the platform. This meant that streamers who played the game risked getting banned themselves. The decision pushed Alex into a complete frenzy. He wrote several blog posts and uploaded multiple YouTube videos complaining that Twitch's decision was completely unfair. According to him, there were far more violent games allowed on the platform, so singling out Yandere Simulator made no sense.
Broadcasting Yandere Simulator on Twitch may result in your account being suspended. So, why was Yandere Simulator banned? Twitch support hasn't responded to me on Twitter, and Twitch hasn't responded to the email I sent them over 24 hours ago. When journalists contacted a Twitch representative to ask for details, the representative merely linked to Twitch's rules of conduct. However, they won't specify exactly which rules Yandere Simulator is breaking.
Here's the thing, making a violent or game is one thing, but making a game centered around schoolgirls is another. Alex had previously tried to argue that the setting was not technically a high school, but rather a post-academy high school. However, the setting still clearly resembled a school filled with young students, which many people found disturbing regardless of the terminology. On top of that, Alex repeatedly refused to remove the shot feature from the game. He also insisted that the Twitch ban had nothing to do with that feature. For more than a year, he continued urging his fans to pressure Twitch into reversing the decision. He asked supporters to contact Twitch directly and question the ban. He even encouraged anyone attending TwitchCon to approach Twitch staff members and ask why Yandere Simulator had been banned. At one point, he expanded this effort by appealing to other game developers as well. In one of his videos, he called on fellow developers to speak out about the situation and question Twitch's policies. Finally, in February 2017, Twitch responded to Alex through an email. In that message, they outlined several reasons for the ban. However, the most important point was that Twitch stated they would be willing to review the game again once it was completed.
We are not prepared to commit to ongoing comprehensive re-evaluations during game development. It's a moving target that we do not feel comfortable revisiting until the game is more complete. especially given the circumstances of the initial suspension. In the future, as Yandere Simulator becomes feature complete, we would be happy to review it again.
Well, here's the thing. Everyone knew that Alex was nowhere near finishing the game. At that stage, the project was not even 50% complete. Despite already being in development for several years, Alex himself likely understood this. It is very possible that he was aware of his own limitations when it came to coding and managing a project of this scale. So around February 2017, he began exploring other options. Among them was the idea of treating Yandere Simulator more like a hobby project, or alternatively hiring someone else who could help him handle the technical side of development.
I've already been approached by multiple companies who have expressed an interest in getting involved with Yandere Simulator's development in exchange for a cut of the game's profits. They've proposed deals that involve me giving up 50% of the game's profits, or losing ownership of the game's intellectual property, or removing certain features from the game. These terms are all very unappealing to me.
Despite the hesitation, in March 2017, Alex announced that he had partnered with a game development company called TinyBuild. In a blog post discussing the partnership, Alex emphasized that working with TinyBuild did not mean he would lose creative control over the game. He reassured his audience that he was not giving up the rights to Yandere Simulator, nor allowing anyone to exploit the project. But the concern from the community was not really about TinyBuild exploiting the game. In fact, TinyBuild was already a credible company, known for publishing and developing titles such as Hello Neighbor and several other indie games. When the partnership was announced, many people were actually more worried about TinyBuild themselves. Critics warned the company that Alex had a long history of controversy and mismanagement. Some even told him directly that working with Yandere Dev was probably a really bad idea. Despite these warnings, the partnership initially moved forward. Alex began sharing monthly updates about development progress. In July 2017, he happily announced on his website that the team had successfully converted Yandere Simulator from JavaScript to C# and had also upgraded the project from Unity 4 to Unity 5. He also published a list of tasks that TinyBuild would be helping him with. Unsurprisingly, many people noticed that the list mostly consisted of very basic technical improvements, features that arguably should have already been implemented, considering that the game had been in development for 3 years at that point. For a few months, Alex's partnership with TinyBuild appeared to be going smoothly, but then something strange happened. Alex suddenly stopped mentioning TinyBuild altogether, and whenever people asked about them, he seemed irritated or unwilling to discuss the subject. Later, it became clear that the partnership had actually collapsed only 6 months after it began. Not only did the collaboration end, but it reportedly ended on very bad terms. According to reports that surfaced afterward, Alex attempted to avoid paying $31,000 that he allegedly owed the company for their work. There were also claims that he threatened them with a smear campaign during the dispute. Once the partnership with TinyBuild ended, Alex was once again completely on his own. Or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that he was once again relying on the mercy of his many volunteers. As we mentioned before, Alex's game had relied heavily on volunteer contributions since the very beginning. After TinyBuild left the picture, he started reaching out to volunteers once again. You might be surprised to learn that more than 50 volunteers have worked on Yandere Simulator in one form or another over the years. But let's take a look at how Alex actually treated these volunteers. Despite not being particularly skilled in coding himself, he expected a very high level of proficiency from people he was not even willing to pay. In a 2015 blog post, he clearly described the kind of volunteers who were not allowed to contact him. He wrote, "Don't volunteer if you're still in elementary school. Don't volunteer if you have no examples of previous work to show me. Don't volunteer if you openly admit that you have no skills whatsoever. Don't volunteer if you have less than a year's worth of experience, doing whatever you're volunteering to do." Keep in mind that he was not paying these people. In another post, he also mentioned that he might consider paying certain volunteers, but only if they met a strict set of criteria. He wrote, "As I stated in the blog post when I first announced that I would begin paying volunteers, I would only consider paying a volunteer if they met certain criteria, contributing to the game on a daily or almost daily basis, contributing to the game in an extremely significant way, are in a position where they have to stop contributing to the game if they aren't making money from it." For years, critics argued that he was essentially taking advantage of these volunteers. Not paying them was one thing, but Alex often did not even give them proper credit for their work. In the comment sections of his videos, volunteers were frequently seen complaining that he failed to credit artists and contributors who had helped create assets for the game. Despite relying heavily on volunteer labor and receiving nearly $5,000 a month from his Patreon, the development of Yandere Simulator was still far from smooth. The game continued to suffer from constant bugs and technical issues. At times, Alex also added updates that many players considered unnecessary. For example, the main character of the game, Ayano Aishi, eventually ended up with more than 200 different hairstyles in the game. Then there is the strange case of Senpai's toothbrush. Reportedly, this toothbrush is one of the heaviest objects in the entire game file, despite being nothing more than a small decorative item. The model itself was originally designed by someone else for CGI commercials, but Alex decided to include it in the game anyway as a simple prop. Speaking of borrowed, or allegedly stolen assets, by around 2017, critics began pointing out that large portions of the game appeared to come from external sources rather than being created specifically for the project. One blog post circulating online even attempted to document many of the assets used in the game, highlighting models and textures that appeared to have been lifted from the Unity Asset Store or taken from other creators. One of the most commonly cited examples is the gymnasium used in Yandere Simulator, which looks almost identical to another pre-existing gym model available online. Similarly, Ayano's bedroom, the living room in her house, and even the street behind the school gates were reportedly taken from external sources. But perhaps the most famous example involves a grass texture that Alex allegedly took from another artist. He slightly modified the texture and attempted to remove the watermark. As it later turned out, the original artist had actually asked Alex to remove the texture because he did not want his work to be associated with Yandere Simulator. During this period, another saga was quietly pushing Alex's own fanbase away from him: the long and troubled development of Osana. In October 2016, Alex decided that Yandere Simulator needed a more prominent character besides Ayano and Senpai, so he proposed adding a female rival named Osana. At the time, Alex claimed that creating this character would take hardly a month. However, things did not unfold the way he predicted. Throughout 2017 and even 2018, Osana kept getting delayed. Alex continued posting updates about her development, but the release date was repeatedly pushed further back. Each time he provided a new explanation for the delay.
And I also can't say exactly how long it will take to implement Osana either. My goal for this year has always been to get Osana into the game fully functional before 2017, and I'm going to do my best to make it happen. Progress continues on Osana. I still can't give you an estimate for when Osana will be ready. I'm aiming to complete her before 2017, but she might require a little more time than that.
Ironically, he would also sometimes downplay the importance of Osana, even though he had originally presented her as a crucial milestone for the game's progress. As these delays continued, many of Alex's supporters gradually turned into critics, or even outright trolls. By June 2018, fans had grown visibly frustrated, and were constantly asking when Osana would finally be released. In response to the growing pressure, Alex posted a video addressing the situation.
Oh wow! We need to have a talk. It was a huge mistake for me to put so much emphasis on Osana in the past, because it created the false impression that Osana should be my one and only priority.
As far as most observers could tell, the video did not go over well with the audience. At that point, many viewers had simply run out of patience. Some members of the community began openly declaring that they were done waiting for the game. The backlash became so intense that some critics even started encouraging people to boycott his Patreon. As criticism and hostility continued to grow, Alex did not respond by taking responsibility for the delays. Instead, he doubled down. On November 11, 2018, he uploaded another video claiming that an organized group of people was deliberately trying to sabotage him and bring down the project. But even after making that claim, Alex was still not finished confronting his critics. He later purchased control of the Yandere Simulator subreddit, which had become one of the main places where people discussed and criticized the game. Once he had control over it, he heavily filtered the subreddit, banning users left and right for what many considered minor or bizarre reasons. Eventually, the subreddit became almost completely cleansed of criticism. At one point, he even told people that if they had personal criticism, they should message him privately instead of posting it publicly on the subreddit. But amidst all of this drama, an obvious question remained. Was he actually still working on Osana? According to Alex, the answer was yes. Throughout 2019, he repeated the same pattern over and over again. He would publish blog posts and videos telling fans that Osana was almost finished, yet the character still never appeared in the game.
I know that you've been waiting for Osana to be complete for a very long time, and I'm sorry if it's disappointing that you have to wait a little longer. I hope it's uplifting to hear that Osana is so close to the finish line. I'm at the stage where I'm basically just tying up loose ends, and
Around the same time, other indie developers began creating fan projects inspired by Yandere Simulator. Two of the most well-known examples were Watashi no Mono and Lovesick. These projects attracted attention from players who were frustrated with the slow progress of Alex's game. When Alex eventually learned about these projects in 2020, he reportedly reacted very strongly. According to several accounts circulating online at the time, he contacted some of the developers and warned that if they continued working on their games, he might himself. The situation quickly spread across social media and led to the creations of the hashtag RIPYandereDev on Twitter, as people debated whether the statements were serious cries for help or an attempt to pressure the developers into shutting their projects down. At this point, people were constantly on Alex's case. Criticism of him had spread all over the internet. People were making memes and resharing his old posts from his Epic Zephon days. At one point, some users even started joining his Discord server just to post phrases like, "Are you coding, son?" Both of these were direct references to an extremely cringy and almost incomprehensible video he had posted years earlier. Alex, of course, did not take the trolling well. He would often lash out at anyone who dared to bring up his past. Sometimes his reactions were filled with so much anger that he would even tell his trolls to themselves, often in extremely graphic and disturbing ways. But by this point, almost nobody was taking him seriously anymore, no matter what he said. The reason was simple. People had discovered that he had previously posted his face on Gaia Online, where he openly talked about how desperate he was to find a girlfriend. Once that information spread, the internet did what it does best. People began creating deepfake videos using his face. Along with that came countless memes, many of which featured his face edited into different situations. But perhaps the worst thing that happened to him came on July 4th, 2020, when his Mail.com account was hacked. Remember the subreddit he had purchased earlier? That was compromised as well, through the same breach. The hacker removed all of the moderators, unbanned everyone Alex had previously banned, and left behind a message. Even after that incident, the trolling did not stop. Once people realized that Alex's Discord server had become heavily moderated, where users would be banned almost instantly for saying anything critical, a new trend emerged. The Discord server banned speedrun. The concept was simple. People would join the server, post something provocative or critical, and then wait to see how quickly the moderators would ban them. In many cases, the bans happened within seconds.
So this is gonna be my personal attempt at getting banned really fast. Alright, so it started. And did I just get banned? Wait, there's no way. Wait, what? Did I just...
Your name got you banned!
Yo! Let's go!
Amidst all of this extremely heavy trolling, Alex finally decided to release Osana in August 2020. However, the update did not land the way he hoped. Many players described it as buggy, awkward, and underwhelming, especially considering that the character had been delayed for years. Around the same time, the tightly controlled moderations of his Discord server also began to unravel. One of the moderators was reportedly discovered to be a pedophile, while another moderator was removed after revealing that they had dissociative identity disorder. According to various reports circulating online, that particular moderator was deeply devoted to Alex and even looked up to him. However, Alex allegedly belittled him and removed his access to the entire server. The situation reportedly made the moderator and Alex ultimately criticized him in front of the entire moderation team. For many observers, this incident reflected the level of empathy, or lack of it, that people had come to expect from Alex. Unfortunately for him, the years that followed were not much better. In October 2021, Alex released the 1980s mode of the game, which featured 10 rivals added in a condensed storyline meant to speed up gameplay. However, many critics pointed out that the rivals felt largely copy-pasted and underdeveloped, and the mode did little to revive excitement around the project. At that point, Alex was clearly going through a difficult period. The game's popularity had dropped significantly, and his Patreon earnings had fallen to less than $2,000 a month, a steep decline compared to the earlier years of the project. From 2014 onward, Alex created his fair share of chaos on the internet through his game, his incel-like behavior, and his constant refusal to accept criticism. Over the years, he was noticed by many big YouTubers, and several lengthy videos were made about him and his controversies. So what was left now? Well, one thing we know about lolcos is that they rarely learn from their mistakes. That is precisely why there are thousands of pages of discussions about such internet personalities on forums like Kiwi Farms. After a few months of relative silence, Alex suddenly found himself back in the spotlight. On September 20th, 2023, a video surfaced that dragged him once again into controversy.
I urge everyone to please, when this video comes out, please watch the video. Not just this, I'll have it linked in my bio. Please save this video and put a timer on for like September 22nd or something. Just please watch the video, it's very important.
This was a teaser video posted on TikTok by a creator named Bug.Cell. The teaser suggested that a much longer video was coming soon, one that would allegedly show evidence that Alex had tried to a minor. However, before the full video could be released, the person described as the victim went to the Osana subreddit and posted the following message: "I am the victim. Please drop the situation. Yandere Dev isn't a saint. We all know this. But he didn't seek me out. He wasn't trying to me, and recording his calls with me was very, very illegal in my state. I've spoken to him about court, lawyers, everything. At this moment, he is not taking any legal action against me and is not actively threatening me. He would have every right to take me to court if the videos were published, so please just drop it. He isn't an predator, just a lonely weirdo. He never pressured me to do anything, never verbally me." At the same time, other posts on the Osana subreddit suggested that Yandere Dev might have been pressuring the individual to withdraw the allegations. In response to the situation, the original TikTok creator Bug.Cell promised to remove the videos, writing, "I posted those TikToks with your permission. I asked if certain ones were okay, and if you were okay. If you ever told me to take down a video, I 100% would have no questions asked. I'm extremely worried about you, and you're minimizing what he did." Like this creator, several other people on TikTok, Reddit, and various online forums expressed concern for the individual involved. To many observers, the situation appeared troubling. Amid all of this, another creator named AliMCC, who had originally planned to release a detailed evidence video, announced that the video would still be published, though with some adjustments. This development prompted yet another post from the individual involved, this time on a different subreddit. In that post, she explained how the situation had started. According to her account, when she first began talking to Alex, he seemed very distant, but over time he relaxed and began making jokes. She claimed that his jokes were so bizarre and entertaining that she started recording their calls, initially intending to turn clips of his voice into soundboard buttons for fun. She later shared some of those recordings with friends. One of those friends allegedly became concerned and concluded that Alex's behavior seemed predatory. After that, the recordings eventually made their way to Ali, the YouTuber preparing the expose video. However, the victim later stated that she was uncomfortable with the way the video was being made, and she attempted to withdraw from the situation. Despite that, Ali continued working on the project, and as promised, the creator eventually released the video anyway, despite the individual saying she no longer wanted it published. The video was finally uploaded on September 24th, 2023, and contained harrowing evidence of Alex's misconduct. The voice recording of his call with a 16-year-old victim is highly inappropriate and deeply unsettling. In her video, Ali also included several screenshots, some highlighting that Alex was indeed threatening the victim to remain silent and even instructing her to lie online. Not only that, in some of the screenshots he could be seen practically begging the victim to spare his life, insisting that he had not done anything so bad. There is also a very detailed log of his Snapchat conversation with the victim, which involved explicit content. In one message, Alex wrote, "The only thing for me to get out of this are pictures and videos to f*** to." This message alone is evidence that Alex requested inappropriate content from a and engaged her in highly conversations. He even offered to send her his own pictures. What is most troubling is that Alex, at 35, consistently communicated in a pattern characteristic of guilt-tripping the victim into believing she was the one at fault. That is exactly what Alex did, telling her she was traumatizing him while he, a 35-year-old adult, was interacting with a 16-year-old girl. In September 2023, Alex also posted a blog on his website titled, "I Am Sorry," in which he did not deny talking to the girl and attempted to take accountability, but ultimately failed. He wrote, and we quote, "Her friend pressured her into providing the recordings to a drama YouTuber who began producing a video about the situation. A preview of the video revealed that the intention of the video would be to characterize me as a predator by presenting clips of the conversation that sounded." After this, Ali's original video was taken down due to copyright strikes, possibly filed by Alex, the victim, or his friend Cameron, who was defending him heavily at the time. Alex naturally suffered a heavy blow from these allegations, as some of his team members who were still working on Yandere Simulator distanced themselves from him. One of the voice actresses, for instance, publicly announced on Twitter that she would no longer be associated with the project. During this period, people also discovered that the victim remained active in Alex's Discord server, regularly interacting with others. There was some speculation about her age, with Cameron previously claiming that she was actually 18. However, Ali later clarified that the victim is indeed underage. confirming she was 16 years old. Finally, around January 2024, Alex released a 15-minute apology video, which was later taken down. In it, he addressed the situation. The video did little to repair his credibility or fully account for his actions.
Hello, I'm Yandere Dev, the developer of Yandere Simulator. Last year, an extremely serious allegation was made about me that I would like to address. The accusation is that I attempted to an underage fan of my game. I will take accountability and admit that I did discuss inappropriate topics with a fan. However, the accusation that I deliberately attempted to this fan is false. In this video, I would like to apologize for what I feel I should apologize for, but I would also like to give you the full story so that you know what is true and what...
Honestly, the video did not really feel like a proper apology to many. Yes, he admitted that talking to a minor the way he did was a mistake, but most of the video was spent arguing that he wasn't actually c***ing anyone. Instead of fully owning up to what happened, he kept explaining his side and trying to clarify the accusations. And somehow, after all these years, Yandere Simulator is still not finished. More than a decade has passed since Alex first pitched the idea on 4chan, yet the game remains stuck in development limbo. The few people who still download and play it often say the same thing. It's buggy, unfinished, and frankly, not very good. Meanwhile, the internet has moved on, but Alex's reputation hasn't improved. Even 2 years after the 2023 controversy, many people still view Alex Mahan as one of the creepiest and most infamous developers the internet has ever seen. From record-breaking success to total collapse, this is the downfall of one streamer the internet can't stop talking about.
It is irrelevant to increase performance on a game that runs on a smart fridge.
This is Pirate Software, who is accused of grabbing money from people using manipulation, lying about his skills.
And I think that that's what's happened with Pirate Software, is that a lot of people just don't like the way that he portrays himself.
And constantly refusing to accept criticism. What started as small doubts quickly turned into massive controversies as people began digging deeper into his past.
Jason Thor Hall, aka Pirate Software, aged 31 at the time, emotionally manipulated me for and financial gain.
His 20 years of experience didn't help when his code was exposed as beginner level. Former coworkers, old online communities, and even people from his past started coming forward with stories that painted a completely different picture from the expert persona he built online. Piece by piece, everything started falling apart. Now his reputation is in ruins, his audience is leaving, and one question remains: how much of it was ever real?
That code is S. It's not code, it's configuration. You would know that if you were a programmer, which you're not.
To understand more about his downfall in more depth, we will need to break down each part of Pirate Software in both online and real life. Since Pirate Software became popular as a streamer, YouTuber, and indie game developer, he constantly talked about how skilled he was at coding, especially when it came to his game Heartbound. One thing people quickly noticed about Jason was how often he bragged about his experience. Almost every chance he got, he reminded everyone that he had 20 years of experience in the gaming industry. To make himself sound even more credible, he constantly called himself a professional developer, and used his past jobs to back up his image online.
The problem is this: I work in the games industry, I have for 20 years. This looks like a nightmare to me.
Over time, viewers started noticing a pattern. Jason would repeat the same claims, stories, and tweets again and again. As someone who has been in the games industry for 20 years, this trend is toxic. Then there was the introduction of a new word, a synonym for professional expert. For the armchair experts in the comments, I am an actual expert in this field. I have been in the games industry for 20 years. He is also a security expert. Heyo, I'm the one in the clip and an offensive security expert of 20 years, but he didn't know that there were people who knew him more than he knew himself, and one of them eventually tripped him over for flexing non-stop. The drama started when a YouTuber named Coding Jesus checked Heartbound's code up and down and criticized it badly. Heartbound is a popular game developed by Pirate Software. Coding Jesus made a video titled "I Reviewed Pirate Software's Code." Oh boy, and that video gathered 2.8 million views with 96,000 likes.
Now, why am I picking on Thor here in particular? Well, Thor has not only what appears to be lied about his experience, or at the very minimum played it off as something that it's really not, but he's also misrepresented the initiative.
In the video, he dragged Pirate Software through the mud by comparing his coding work with entry-level intern or junior developer. According to him, his work was worse than that of a junior developer at work. Pirate Software couldn't even understand something that is taught to the interns in their first week of work.
For example, what he could have done is created a nested structure where all of those default values, instead of being hard-coded and written in some file, can simply be stored in a YAML or configuration file that can be edited outside of the build, as to not waste time rebuilding the entire application, in a YAML or XML format. That's Development 101, you learn it in the first week of your new job as either an intern or a junior developer.
Yet he confidently claimed that he was an expert developer and knew everything. However, according to Coding Jesus, Pirate's coding didn't even have proper comments, making it difficult to understand.
What's even worse is he now also needs to remember what 419 means. So somewhere in his code, he needs to actually add a comment or something to represent what 419 is. As you can see here, I found the file that contains all these events, which are the association between a magic number and some state. It's very obvious that this can get very unwieldy extremely quickly.
Here's why things looked messy. Pirate Software used magic numbers in the code, which were backed by no background information. So if anyone had to find what the magic numbers meant, they would have to dig through the entire code to understand it.
You download these VODs before he takes them down, because honestly, if I was claiming I'm a game developer with 20 years of experience, this would be embarrassing to have online. Let's take a look at what's really wrong about this, and I don't even need to be a game dev to understand that. When you look at the code here, what do you see? You see a lot of magic numbers. That's an industry term for numbers that don't have any description or explanation as to what they are or why they exist.
Then there was an issue with the Boolean. A Boolean is a data type in computing that can tell if something is true or false. Heartbound codes lacked the complete explanation of what meant what, and if a new developer joined him in the work, there would be a lot of confusion to deal with.
It should be a Boolean data type. What does 0 mean? Booleans are represented as integers under the hood. So in C++, anything that isn't 0 is true, so 1 is true. But why would you even give another developer the option to write question asked equals 42? In theory, that should be true, because anything other than 0 is true, but why even allow somebody to write code that can potentially be that confusing? It's just a no-go.
And when this video started making rounds on the internet, Pirate Software couldn't hold back. In short, he didn't take the criticism well and took it as a personal attack on him. He claimed that the video and the YouTuber were nothing but a grifter who was chasing relevance on YouTube.
It's just another, YouTube grifter trying to fight for relevance, dude. That's all that is.
He further tried to disregard Coding Jesus' review by saying that it was made in bad faith. He might not have worked with the same engine or programming language. For this reason, he was throwing shade on Pirate Software. To cut it short, he claimed that a coding YouTuber didn't know anything about coding.
This out in the exact same order in the save file. You can read about the ARG here. It's just a bunch of disingenuous arguments put up in bad faith trying to make me look like a bad programmer. And in reality, this guy has never used the engine that I'm working in, never used the language that I'm working with, and all of his points are moot as a result.
At first, Pirate Software's response seemed reasonable. However, the tables turned quickly when another YouTuber, QuinTheo, got Coding Jesus on a call to discuss Pirate Software's response in detail. They worked together to dissect each part of the Pirate Software's claims in the response video, and when they did, it became clear that Pirate Software was, in fact, wrong for all reasons. The first thing that came out was the failure to use the simple for loop, which is a very basic step that any programmer can do. They caught this mistake by looking at Pirate's code, which was repeated in the same way using manual writing instead of using a loop to achieve the same results quickly.
Yeah, another point as well is, if he did not want to use a for loop, instead of associating an alarm with an index like alarm 0, alarm 1, alarm 2, because as somebody reviewing code, it's not very evident what that actually refers to, he could have said alarm and then had a variable called left and set it to 0.
And when they asked him about it, he completely dismissed the question, and instead talked about something different. This wasn't the only time he did it. Pirate Software had been doing the same for a long time. Whenever he was questioned about a certain thing, he would go ahead and talk about something completely unrelated.
And setting it to 0 for every object in the array. So what he's doing here is a classic example of deflection. He pretends the chatter asked, why do you set the alarms to 0, instead of the question, which was, why don't you iterate over them in a for loop? A for loop is a very basic coding construct. If you're iterating through a consecutive set of numbers, you definitely want to use that. It's the perfect scenario for a for loop. But he pretends that he didn't understand the question.
When questioned about Boolean and data types, he directly claimed that those two didn't exist in the programming language he was using. However, when both Coding Jesus and QuinTheo dug deeper, they learned that the programming language he was using supported both Boolean and data types. Pirate Software was once again proven wrong.
So yeah, that's correct.
Data types are not defined in GameMaker. You cannot define a Boolean. You can use 0, 1, or true, false at will. It doesn't do anything. None of this matters in this language.
The Boolean and the data types.
Okay.
So I'd like to interpret this in two ways, because what he could have been saying here when he says data types are not defined is that you can't create your own custom data types, which is indeed wrong. You can create structures. in GameMaker. It's in the documentation. Search up structs and constructors. But maybe he wasn't referring to structs, maybe he was referring to booleans, which also just isn't true. In one of my more recent videos, I investigated that. I pulled up the GameMaker documentation.
His false claims only made things worse. Pirate had spent 5 minutes double-checking his own work before speaking so confidently, he probably could have avoided embarrassing himself this badly.
No, this is just the standard that you should be held to in general if you've been coding specifically like for 8 years on a single game.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything about that is not changeable inside of GameMaker. Which, you know, I would expect a little bit better from someone named.
But somehow it got even worse. People on Kiwi Farms also started reviewing his code, and they were not impressed either. The person named Soyjack Enjoyer shared all the details about what went wrong in the code. According to Soyjack, his code looked like he had his story choice stored as a random number in a big list. Other than that, the whole thing was copy-pasted, which was messy, but that wasn't even the real issue. The real nightmare would happen later when someone actually needed to understand what those random numbers meant. For example, if the game needed to remember whether a player picked hot coffee earlier in the story, Pirate would have to go digging through giant files just to figure out which random number represented that choice. Then there was another line. Now, if he wants to change something in his code, he would go back and try to remember what 216 and 2 meant in the coding language. This would take a lot of time and might even cause a huge number of mistakes. Even worse, if he accidentally typed the wrong number somewhere, it could create bugs that would take forever to find. One tiny mistake could break things completely. Soyjack even explained that Pirate could have avoided all this with just a couple of hours of proper setup. Instead of random mystery numbers, he could have written things in a way that actually made sense, where anyone reading the code could immediately understand what was happening. For example, like this. In the end, following the Pirate's method is alright if it's a small project, but if it's a big project, these random numbers can ruin the hours of hard work. So for someone who calls himself an expert and a professional with 20 years of experience, this kind of approach just doesn't make sense. And this wasn't only one example. Pirate's every single project and code looks like messed up random numbers and words. Pirate Software, originally known as Jason Thorhall, is a highly popular programming YouTuber and streamer, and he reached where he is today by working with different video game companies, including Blizzard. At Blizzard, he worked as an offensive security specialist, and then at Amazon Game Studio as a Python developer.
When I first started at Blizzard, I made $10 an hour. I actually made $10.50 an hour, and I was working on night crew. And then when I went to day crew, which happened only a year into my employment, my paycheck showed me that I was making only $10 an hour. And I said, hey man, where'd that extra money go?
But it wasn't Jason's work that got him a place at Blizzard, but his father's. According to Jason himself, his father was one of the top 10 people working at Blizzard. And because of him, Jason got to work at Blizzard as well.
So I worked at Blizzard for 7 years. I worked on everything from World of Warcraft Vanilla all the way to Overwatch. I didn't work on Burning Crusade. That was the only thing I didn't work on. My dad worked there for 23 years. He was a cinematic editor, so he was the director of cinematics, technically.
That's not all. Jason is also a penetration test hacker, with around 3 black badges that he earned from DEF CON. DEF CON is a hacker convention that is held annually in Las Vegas, Nevada. The main goal of this convention is to bring together hackers, security professionals, and technologists to work on computer security. This convention also arranges workshops, contests, and other activities, and Jason became one of those individuals who participated in it and earned badges. But here's the catch. Jason didn't win those badges as a sole competitor. He won them as part of a team of 12 people, then became a part of a 25-person team as well. To put it simply, Jason won these badges using other, more competent people, instead of using his own knowledge. His earliest life was no different from the current one. Going back to 2006, his internet presence first became known under the nickname Maldavius Figtree, linked to Second Life. He was then working at Brodigan & Tuck, an estate company in the virtual world of Second Life, a video game. Second Life is a multi-user virtual world where people can create their avatars and interact with other users and user-created content. At the time, this company was described as an international libertarian, which is basically focused on finding and sharing stories within a free market community of Second Life. But Jason didn't hold on to this job for long, and quit soon. On September 16th, 2006, Jason founded his own company by the name Darksphere Creations. This company aimed to create avatars for the Second Life in exchange for money. Darksphere Creations was also featured in the Second Life newspaper, and it turned out that the company was indeed successful in the business. On August 4th, a brand new sim named Machina was born. The proud father is Maldavius Figtree. Maldavius and his company, Darksphere Creations, DSC, has become a huge success. Some of his products include Kahoot's Paint Dog, sold for $800 Linden in Second Life, and C8A Ferret, sold for the same price. He has around 124 different fursuits in this video game for sale. Looking at the WikiFur page, it was confirmed that Jason was very much active in the furry community at the time. Maldavius Figtree, real name Jason Hall, born July 17, 1987, is a furry who lives in the United States. His persona is a ferret. Jason wasn't just any other worker, he was very well known in Second Life. He was even interviewed by Second Life magazine known as Ava Stars. In the interview, Jason was presented as a funky furry. Funky furry Maldavius Figtree owns Dark Sphere Creations, as well as being a talented sculptor. Most interestingly, Jason, as a furry, was shown to have been involved in a relationship or even a gay marriage with a person of the same gender called Raccoon.Hijinks. This person, River, alternatively known as Fishbones, had a name, Shay, who was at the time an illustrator for Heartbound, an exotic veterinarian, a furry pooner, Jason's roommate, and also an intimate partner. According to Kiwi Farms, both Shay and Jason were highly interested in furry swinger parties, which also seems to be the reason that Jason's secret marriage fell apart. Hi, I'm River, or Shay. I do a lot of art and come on Second Life to idle around and chat. Yes, you heard that right. Jason had been married to a woman named Nicole Jellett during October 17th, 2015, till August 19, 2020. Their marriage remained intact for 5 years, and they parted ways for unknown reasons. According to a hate website called PirateSoftware.sucks, Jason and Nicole stopped living in the same house in February 2019. They filed for a divorce a year later in 2020, and then got divorced in August 2020. A judgment of dissolution of marriage and / or domestic partnership will be entered, and the parties are restored to the status of single persons. But this wasn't just some regular hate website. It had way more exposure than anything else. Around the year 2018, Jason would meet with a guy and ruin his life for good. This is the same guy who made the website to share his painful experience with the world. The guy's name was Lyric Wolf, who used to produce and post transcriptions of music videos from video games, including indie games such as Undertale, Celeste, and One Shot on his YouTube channel. Up until that time, Lyric's life was going well, but February 2018 brought a twist. At that time, he ended up transcribing and publishing a track from Jason's game, Heartbound, and that one transcription turned his life around. He started getting into conversations with Jason, which were mostly about copyright and content creation. But those conversations would soon take an expected turn. On August 26, 2018, Lyric donated $800 to Thor, all while he was streaming the development of his game. And right after that donation, Jason started showing romantic interest in Lyric. The very next day, August 27, 2018, Jason started an unannounced and non-consensual erotic roleplay with Lyric. He didn't even try to ask if Lyric was interested in Jason at all or wanted to be in erotic roleplay with him. Jason would start to show unwanted attention, affection, and even love bomb him without any prior notice. And whenever Lyric would turn his love down, Jason would call him corrupt or clueless. Yeah, it fucking is how it is. You replied to me when you could, but you had time to with others. Lyric even shared some screenshots of their chats on the same website. Can't see why anyone would break up with you. You really make my life a ton better. You make mine better too. You're so good to me, CC. Lyric later told Jason that he wasn't interested in a committed relationship with him, but Jason continued to pursue him, trying to convince him to say yes. He didn't take no for an answer. It is worth noting that Jason was at the time committed to 2 relationships. He was married to Nicole and was in a relationship with Shay. Are you saying you're interested in a casual thing with me but not a serious one? I'm attracted to you, but I'm not ready for a commitment yet. Stuff with me, but also with others then. I just want to be friends or close friends, you know? When he couldn't accept the rejection, Jason started gaslighting Lyric into believing that he was already committed to Jason, given that he wasn't seeing anybody at the time. And you don't want to have IRL stuff with anyone else, right? Yes, and he was, in fact, successful in getting Lyric into a commitment without making it official, by using the excuse that Lyric was turning him down again and again. Then something unexpected happened. Jason went too far with his desperation, not for an extramarital affair, but for money. It turned out that Jason was after Lyric's money. Weeks after he had convinced Lyric for a relationship, he would constantly ask Lyric to send him all of his savings. Said you loved me, said you would give me your entire savings, wanted to live with me, wanted to be with me forever. Jason would fix this one line about donations, among other stuff like love, living together forever, and complaining about a bunch of other things. But instead of making things look better, it only made the situation look even more suspicious. For all intents and purposes, you either didn't mean those initial things you said to me, or you don't mean the ones you're saying now. And the only thing stopping us from moving forward is that I don't know if I'm ready to date yet. Jason then pushed Lyric to meet him at the 2018 TwitchCon. During their conversations, he would constantly talk about how nice it would be to see each other at that event. Jason even counted the days until they met at TwitchCon. The strange part was was that Lyric himself reportedly wasn't nearly as invested in meeting Jason as Jason seemed to be. Eventually, the two met during the first day of the convention, in October 2018. Then on the second day, Lyric ended up spending time alone with Shay while Jason was busy elsewhere. During that conversation, Shay unexpectedly mentioned that Jason secretly had a wife. Once he went back to his hotel room, he quickly texted Jason to ask him about his wife. However, Jason immediately denied it and called it misinformation, blaming Lyric for misunderstanding it. As far as I knew, we were fooling around and seeing if we're compatible. You've been pushing a lot for a commitment kind of thing, and a wife apparently. Is there a ring on my finger? There's not, I just heard about it, that's all. But Lyric didn't give up on it. Instead, he contacted Shay directly and shared screenshots of his conversations with Jason, including messages that revealed how personal and emotional their relationship had become. Shay felt devastated by Jason as he broke the trust in their relationship. To communicate this, Shay contacted Jason and confronted him about his cheating with Lyric. But instead of taking responsibility, Jason reportedly denied almost everything. He blamed Lyric for the situation, and even denied being in a relationship with either of them at all. Nah, dude, you're not. Sending logs to Shay? Don't really care, dude. Nothing is even going on. Look, when I showed Shay, I had no idea how deep this ran. I was just in a lot of emotional turmoil. How deep this ran. Definitely not discussing this with you. At that point, Lyric decided to remove himself from the entire mess. Jason blocked him soon afterward, but there was still one major issue left: the money. Lyric had spent $800 on Jason, which he had to get back. He reached out to PayPal's customer service and claimed that he had mistakenly sent $800 to Jason. It was supposed to be $8. After months of arguments between Lyric, Jason, and PayPal, Lyric eventually managed to recover most of the money in March 2019. But that refund apparently pushed Jason over the edge. Losing hundreds of dollars was something he clearly did not take lightly. He started making several Twitter posts about Lyric, naming and shaming him. According to him, Lyric was a scammer. But things escalated even further on April 1st, 2019, when Jason hit Lyric's YouTube channel with copyright strikes. Always cool to see an $800 chargeback 212 days after a donation. At Ask PayPal, what exactly is going on here and why was this allowed to pass the 120-day limit? As a result, 3 of his videos on Heartbound songs were taken down by YouTube. In response, Lyric shared his situation in a Twitter post. He claimed that he had made Heartbound cover songs with permission, and now his account was in danger. Notably, he never even mentioned Pirate Software by name in the post. Bad news. Got a copyright strike for cover songs of #Heartbound. I literally had permission from them to do all the songs, so I thought it would be okay. Now my YouTube account is in danger. Creators, please remember to be careful about the copyright. Love you all, please stay. But Jason clearly wasn't interested in letting the situation quietly die. He ended up responding to the tweet by mentioning the chargeback of $800 and Lyric being a scammer. Jason made it clear that he wouldn't let a scammer take advantage of his work. Charging back an $800 donation in 192 days after giving it to a small indie studio results in situations like this. As someone scamming us out of our income, I will fight you into the ground to prevent you from making a single cent off of our work. Right after this tweet, Lyric started getting a lot of hate and criticism from Jason's community and supporters. This didn't only affect his social media life, but real life as well. At the time, Lyric was enrolled in a double major in mechanical engineering and aerospace engineering in college. His GPA went from 3.92 to 2.76, and then straight to 2.57, all because of the circumstances created by Jason. Since his grades were constantly dropping, he had to drop out of college. And somehow, this still wasn't the most disturbing story connected to Jason. Another anonymous account later surfaced online from a person referred to only as X. This person met Jason through Howler, a furry dating app. At first, everything seemed to be going smoothly until Jason decided to violate X's boundaries repeatedly. Jason would constantly push X, trying to convince them to have sex. It was at the time Jason was going through a tough phase, as described by him because of his divorce, and he wanted someone to share his pain. X invited him over and made it clear that there would be nothing more than cuddles. But when they started hanging out in bed, things went south fast. Jason started doing what he was told not to. He forced himself on X repeatedly despite X telling him to stop and pushing him away. Jason didn't hear X's denials and continued to be in the act. When X complained and lectured him on what he had done without X's consent, Jason replied with, "You know you liked it." X later shared this incident with their friend. "Now my bed smells like a lot of..." He went a little too ham. X also shared their chats with Jason in screenshots. It was a chat on Discord, but Jason seemed to have deleted his side of the messages. In the chats, X and Jason seemed to talk things out about what went down that day. "We need to talk when you have the chance." Well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but our last interactions left me feeling really uncomfortable, to put it lightly. But I wanted to talk to you about it, if you remember me, before making any judgments. And honestly, this started becoming a pattern with Jason. Whether it involved relationships, online drama, or business conflicts, he constantly seemed willing to cross boundaries whenever it benefited him personally. Around this same period, Jason was also heavily building his image online as a tech expert and game developer. 10 10 years ago, Jason also posted about his progress on a subreddit called IMO under the account Thorich. According to the post, he wore many hats at Blizzard Entertainment over his 6 years there. Wore many hats at Blizzard Entertainment over my 6-year career. Left Blizzard with the title of Senior Red Team Specialist. Won a black badge at DEF CON 23 from 1057. It's radioactive. I make cryptographic puzzles for the hacking community on the side. He also mentioned that he used to make cryptographic puzzles for the hacking community as a side job. But while Jason was trying to present himself as some elite programmer and security expert, his reputation inside Second Life was becoming increasingly controversial. Jason had created some cubes to look at the activity inside the simulations. They would look for suspicious items like weapons, orbiters, or nukes, and automatically react when such items appeared. To put it simply, they acted like a mass surveillance tool in Second Life. The problem was that the system barely worked properly. People quickly realized they could bypass the entire thing just by renaming their objects to something generic like object. So not only was the tool ineffective, but many users also questioned whether Jason should even have been using mass monitoring systems like that in the first place. But even that wasn't the biggest controversy surrounding him in Second Life. In Second Life, he wanted to make his name among different furry communities. In order to gain status and attention, he allegedly crashed different community simulations, including one connected to Woodbury University, a well-known location inside the game. PN eventually retaliated in the most extreme way possible. Jason ended up getting fully doxxed online. His personal information, including phone numbers, address, email, and real name, was posted publicly on the PN wiki for everyone to see. Jason reportedly tried to get the information removed but failed. For a long time, the wiki became a giant gossip hub centered around Jason's life, with even his family being dragged into the discussions. And eventually, after all the chaos surrounding the attacks and retaliation, the Woodbury University region itself was permanently removed by the creators of Second Life. But that wasn't all. Jason was involved in another big controversy. This situation was triggered when Jason's business partner, Wingless Emoto, requested a change in partnership. According to her, Wingless's contribution to the business, which was artwork and designing, was much bigger than Jason's programming work. She wanted to go from 50-50 split to an 80-20, but Jason wasn't ready to accept it.
Eventually, that person came by and they're like, hey, I want to renegotiate. I want 80%. Now I'm going to give you 20% because I do the art and you just do the programming. They didn't respect that the programming was half the job, right?
Jason refused Wingless's request and insisted that their original deal stay exactly the same. The argument eventually became so messy that their shared work was open sourced, completely destroying the business arrangement they had built together.
And I said, no, like we have a deal for 50-50. Like, no, we're not doing that. And they said, okay. And they took all of our work and they open sourced it.
And then Jason did the most unexpected thing. He held a staff meeting at a time when he knew Wingless wouldn't be available. And while she was asleep, Jason spoke with other staff members and told them that Wingless was earning too much money and that she needed to be fired. The terms of service for a Fig Tree's company, Darkfear Creations, were then conveniently changed, and Miss Emoto was removed from her position, all before she awoke to the news. The news broke out and reached media outlets, which readily showed Jason as the villain who fired his employee and partner at his convenience. However, Jason ignored the hate and turned down the accusations. He claimed that the outlets were siding with Wingless without hearing his sides of the story.
Tabloids at the time do what tabloids do. We were kind of a big deal in the game at the time for the avatars we were selling, so they made extreme and idiotic statements and took the side of just the artist without reaching out to me.
Jason later explained the reason behind it. He claimed that he had fired her because she was lazy and even leaked their personal chats. In the chats, Jason seemed to be angry at Wingless for not doing anything. He kept criticizing her using insults and complained about wanting her gone from the company. You're an ass. You really are. You don't give a shit about this anymore, do you? You realize everyone else in the company is telling me to just drop your ass right now? Even Gryler. But according to the Kiwi Farms thread, Wingless wasn't even a full-time employee at the company. She worked as a commission-based artist. This means she only gets paid for work she has already done. In such a situation, there is no reason to fire someone for being lazy. And apparently Wingless wasn't the only person who had negative stories about Jason's behavior inside Second Life. As more people began speaking up, even stranger accusations started appearing. One of them said Jason didn't only crash the Woodbury sim, but he also bugged walls and objects to secretly keep track of everything. He hid objects in the walls so he could log chats and know who was in a certain location. His behavior kept getting worse, and the stories about him just kept piling up. According to several people from Second Life, Jason treated the game less like a virtual world and more like a real-life power trip. People claimed he would secretly track users, and even harass people, until they completely gave up playing Second Life altogether. He has backstabbed countless people, even harassing people in real life, and getting others to harass them outside of SL until they drop out of existence, one way or another. One person claimed that Jason was extremely vengeful and couldn't tolerate someone being more successful than him. And honestly, that explains a lot, especially the situation with Wingless Emoto, who is reportedly making more money and getting more praise than Jason himself. And that didn't sit well with Jason, and the reason behind Jason's carefree, hostile behavior was his source, which was his father. Many believed he was rarely held accountable because of his father's connections and influence. While other people faced punishment or backlash for smaller issues, Jason somehow always seemed to escape serious consequences. Some even claimed that Leiden Labs and the creators of SL didn't want to draw attention through Jason's controversies. Another former business partner also shared the same story. According to them, Jason was extremely lazy when it came to work. They claimed that if they worked 30 hours, Jason would work for 80 minutes and then expect to get half the payment for it. When Anon complained about this, as well as being constantly ignored for 2 weeks, Jason gave him his, "Do you know how good a scripter I am, how much I'm worth? I make $8,000 a month from SL" speech. To make everything even worse, it came out that Wingless Emoto was only around 16 or 17 years old while working with Jason, who was already 20 at the time. Jason himself admitted in leaked messages with someone called Rick Van Hazlitt that he used to drive hours to visit her at her house. Once these chats started spreading across forums, people immediately began questioning the nature of their relationship. She's also underage, so I've reported her. I know this because I met her. She lives 2 hours from me. To be clear, there is no confirmed evidence that anything illegal or romantic happened between them, but because of the age difference and the leaked messages, the situation quickly turned into another huge controversy surrounding Jason. And just like every other scandal before it, Jason responded with long explanations and excuses, insisting people were twisting the story against him. And around this time, Jason's fans came to his rescue. One of them was the smuggest Hat Kid. This person left a big comment on a Reddit post where it was discussed. I posted a chat log somewhere else, but essentially OP called him a PDF file for hiring a produce NSFW artwork and also visiting her home. However, OP failed to acknowledge that in the very chat logs they posted. He says that when he visited her, he found out that she was a minor, fired her, and reported her. But Jason himself never mentioned this justification in his response to a YouTube video. Jason failed to claim that he didn't know Wingless was a minor, but when he knew, he got rid of her. Instead, he said that the situation occurred years ago, and now they are adults and even best friends. If someone had any issue, they could directly reach out to Wingless on Twitter, who now goes by the name Mameface. Mame and I made up like 4 to 5 years later. We've been best friends for a very long time. You can reach out to them to confirm any of this. We've actually been talking about having them on stream to stop this tide of idiocy. If you've been engaging in this, you're trying to dig up settled beef that is older than you are. These two controversies started to define Jason's true character, and then after he said goodbye to Second Life, he started his own game company called Pirate Software. And there were rumors that Jason treated the company more like his personal project instead of like a big business venture. In some interviews, Jason claimed that he had to understand basic tools like GameMaker from scratch. I worked in GameMaker Studio, built the whole thing out, and Googled absolutely everything along the entire way. Things like, how do I move a character in GameMaker Studio? This only meant one thing, that Jason didn't really understand the functions of game development and software. Ironically, in interviews, Jason would often give advice to other developers, warning them not to jump straight into their dream game too early. According to him, many indie developers fail because they start projects that are too big before properly learning the basics. He encouraged people to begin with smaller games first, gain experience slowly, and understand development properly before taking on massive projects. They would do their dream game as their first game, then it would take them 3 to 7 years. They'd get no feedback along the way, and they would have no community interaction along the way. While he suggested this to others, it seemed he failed to follow his own advice, as his multiple projects remained delayed for years. One of the major examples is Heartbound, which had multiple different release dates because Jason couldn't work on the project. Soon after, Jason came up with an indie game called The Champions of Breakfast. It is an indie game in which you have to save breakfast to save the world. According to reports, he created this game in under a month, and Jason used a user-friendly approach to create the game. He started the development through a Discord server, as he wanted to create a community for the game from the start. The main goal was to get direct feedback from the players and grow the support in an organic way, and his approach worked in his favor, but only in the beginning. He received positive reviews, but his fake braggart personality caught up with him. Jason would make bold claims about having extraordinary technical abilities which he didn't have. At one point, he confidently claimed that he easily solved a piracy issue by attaching game progress to achievements stored in save files, and according to him, this method made the game imperitable, which means no one could copy the game illegally and sell it. What he didn't know was that his proposed system could easily be compromised.
And if you look at this, we have 160 achievements for it, and all of them are very simple. The way that I did this is quite funny. I tried to find a way so that our game wouldn't get pirated, because it'd be easy to pirate it. We knew that you could break Steam DRM very quickly. This is your save file. When you first start the game up, it actually checks what achievements you have, and it unlocks powers based on your achievements. This is actually the save file for the character, so you can't pirate it because you can never use the achievements. It made it unpiratable, which is deeply hilarious to me.
His critics pointed out that Jason didn't really know how piracy and game systems work. He was only using his guesses to implement something and stay relevant. and Jason had actually thought he had created some pro-level foolproof system, confirming his overconfident side. Then there was another project, but this one was way bigger than Champions of Breakfast. It was Heartbound, an indie role-playing game, which we had discussed a few minutes back. This game is about a boy, his dog, secrets, and sanity. To put it simply, the player has to follow the adventures between time and space. Jason had spent years working on it and constantly hyping it up online as proof of his talent and experience. But despite all the years of development, the game never really got the level of praise Jason expected. Many people felt it simply didn't match the level of expertise he constantly bragged about. This game became more popular when MatPat played it on his live stream and triggered a controversy. MatPat is a former YouTuber and American internet personality. He presented the game in a way that it came face to face with another big game named Undertale. This game is developed and designed by Toby Fox. Undertale is a role-playing video game that involves a child who falls into an underground world under the surface of the earth, separated by a magical barrier. Both Undertale and Heartbound carry some similarities. Although MatPat had clearly mentioned the name Heartbound in the video title, description, and throughout the video, Jason still lost his cool. MatPat never said that he was playing a sequel to Undertale. Jason went to Twitter and showed his anger at MatPat. He openly criticized MatPat for making such a video, while misusing tags and misnaming his studio. Hey, at MatPatGT, I'm pretty disappointed here, and so is our community. Your recent hashtag GT Live came across as an Undertale clickbait mashup instead of being about hashtag Heartbound. You never linked to our game, and you got our studio name wrong as well. All while this was happening, another big YouTuber, a gamer from Mars, made a video on the whole thing. According to him, linking video games, especially an indie game, wasn't a standard practice. Secondly, the tags that Jason was complaining about were not even a thing. He pointed out that YouTube tags are simply hidden search tools viewers never even see. What MatPat did was that he used a tag for Undertale, so people who play Undertale could find his video playing Heartbound. Another thing that a gamer from Mars pointed out was that MatPat forgot to take the full name of Jason's studio, Pirate Software. While referring to the game, he mistakenly said Pirate Only instead of Pirate Software, and Jason didn't like it. He also explained that shortening studio names is extremely common in gaming. People say Blizzard, Valve, or Square all the time without using the full company names, so getting upset because someone said Pirate instead of Pirate Software just came across as overly sensitive and unnecessary. Even when people went against Jason and his complaints, there was one person who backed him up. It was Toby Fox, the creator of Undertale. Robert F. Toby Fox is a 34-year-old American indie game developer who developed and published Undertale in 2015. He is also a voice actor and known for his RPG video game making and ROM hacks. Toby Fox's community already hated MatPat because of some previous grudges, stemming from MatPat's allegedly negative interactions with the game. He replied to MatPat's tweet about the whole situation, calling Matt out, "You should link to any game you play. Creators need all the help they can get. And think carefully if you're misleading your audience with how you present your videos. You went too far this time." Toby Fox jumped in and supported Jason's complaints, and when devs like Toby Fox criticize someone, it is very natural for people to come in and support their cause. Even when the issue was small and senseless, MatPat was still torn down by Jason, Toby, and their communities for calling Heartbound a clone of Undertale. But the controversies around Jason didn't stop at game development or online arguments. People also started questioning something far more personal, his voice. Jason had been camouflaging his real voice behind a fake deep voice. This was confirmed by comparing two of Thor's videos. One of them was Thor's bear interview at an exhibition, where he talked about his games in detail. In this video, his voice seemed medium-pitched. However, when you go look at his other videos on his YouTube channel, you will easily see the big difference. Here Jason sounded extremely deep-voiced with a low pitch, as if he were deliberately talking like that or using a mic filter. When someone in the comments pointed out this thing, Jason couldn't take it. He jumped in to respond and clear the misunderstanding. According to him, his voice dropped because he had hit 33. The screenshot of the comments was shared in the Kiwi Farms thread, which claimed this video was 7 years old, but Jason was bothered enough to respond to that comment about his voice. "Nah, my voice dropped into the floor when I hit 33. It is hilarious though. It was apparently his doctor who told him that men hit their second puberty in their 30s, which changes their voice.
Went back to the doctor. Doctor's like, hey, sometimes in your early 30s, your voice can change as a man, and it's effectively second puberty.
Even if this justification is accepted, people couldn't ignore the fact that his voice had changed within a few days. The difference was visible between the clips posted on May 11, 2019.
Is this live stream of Chair Jam? It is. I just finished my chair. I'm ready to submit to the judges. I want to thank all of you guys for being here.
And May 16th, 2019.
Oh my god, look at the donut. Oh, that is a powerful donut.
It wasn't just those 2 videos that made the difference prominent. There were many streaming videos where his voice seemed to be less deep than in his other videos. At other times, the audio peaks or bends whenever his voice gets heavy. This means that he might be using equalization and artificially lower frequencies.
Chat's asking if it's my voice changer. Shut up.
Yeah, what if Thor actually talks like super high pitched?
What if he sounds like a now?
This is actually my real voice all the way down.
When someone inspected his voice more deeply using a tool called a spectrogram, they found something strange. Whenever Jason spoke alone in his videos, his voice lacked mid-range frequencies which he might have reduced intentionally. But when he is speaking with others involved, the voices seem to have mid-range frequencies. This confirmed that Jason was in fact using a voice-changing tool. But this wasn't all about digital effects on his voice. When people listened to his voice, it seemed that Jason was exaggerating or over-projecting his speaking style, similar to how voice actors do. And before that controversy could die down, Jason found himself in another huge online clash. This one was with the now popular American YouTuber Ross Scott, who has a YouTube channel by the name Accursed Farms. The whole drama kicked off when Ross made a video titled Games as a Service is Fraud. He uploaded this video on his channel Accursed Farms in 2019. Ross had become popular on the internet in 2007 when he produced his own comedy series. In the series, Ross gave his voice and personality to a silent character, Gordon Freeman from Half-Life, a video game. Through this, Ross was able to create a strong reputation in the gaming community, and because of his recognition, Ross easily gained a lot of attention when he talked about this topic. Games as a service is fraud. By that, Ross meant that gaming companies had the authority to take down a game. So even if someone buys their game, it doesn't fully give them a pass to keep that game alive in any way. In other cases, companies stop selling the old games and then restrict people who try to preserve them online on a website.
Is that it's unworkable because you can't expect publishers to support games forever. Yeah, we know. That's why we've never asked for that. I must have said this 100 times now. It was written on the website from day one, but this keeps coming up over and over again.
The same has happened with ROM websites, where companies end up attacking sites hosting games that are no longer available physically and digitally. Ross pointed out that when someone buys a game, they don't actually own it, and that's where the problem lies.
Let's talk about the actual bad business practices. In the case that a studio is making a live service game, and they sell it to you as a product, they say that you are purchasing the game, or you are buying the game, when in reality you're actually purchasing or buying a license to that game. I think that we should be fighting about that. The initiative is not trying to call that out specifically. It's trying to say that all games need to stay in a functional, playable state.
The gaming companies act as if you had only bought temporary access to the game, instead of buying it completely. This means the publishers have a pass to take away the access whenever they want. In simple words, Ross complained that the companies remove the games completely from history, and don't even allow anyone to preserve them. Thus, many people and gamers who really care about digital art are left stranded.
There's nothing wrong with that at all. I have no problems with the end of a video game.
See, I wish he started his big YouTube video with that message instead of deleting it. Instead, he presented himself as pro-preservation and not wanting the medium to die out.
It's incredibly important to me that we keep making games and that the next generation has the tools to do so that our medium doesn't die out. And it never will. And that's the whole intention of all of this.
After this video became popular among gamers, Ross came up with something more effective. Just after 5 years, he introduced a big campaign named Stop Killing Games in 2024. This campaign had one goal: to push for stronger consumer rights and better preservation of video games. The best part about it was its involvement with the European Citizens Initiative, and this could bring the issue to the European Parliament for further discussion. The petition would present the request that the publishers stop disabling the games remotely when the support ends. They also made it clear that they didn't mean to ask companies to keep running servers forever or give up on ownership. Instead, they wanted the games to be playable even after the support ends, so the players who had paid for them do not lose access completely. Despite the clear message of the campaign, Jason didn't approve of it. He jumped in and showed his displeasure towards the campaign in August 2024. He did it first through one of his 10-hour-long streams, which received a lot of hate, and then eventually it was taken down. Stop Killing Games is a vaguely worded attack on live service games as a whole, instead of being a focused on taking down the niche practice of single-player games, including always online functionality that can cause the game to be shut down at a later date. If you want my support, then write better legislature. Now here, Jason called the petition legislature, which was clearly not. He insisted that the petition was written poorly and had a vague meaning. According to him, it didn't solve any issues. Instead, brought up new problems.
You want to put together legislation because it's the right thing to do.
We did!
Not because you can convince legal representatives to do it no matter what.
In one of his live streams, Jason said that the campaign was trying to restrict the game developers from disabling single-player games through DRM systems, but his critics rightfully called him out and claimed that he was oversimplifying things and even misunderstanding the real goal of the campaign.
So for those who don't understand, the Stop Games initiatives is basically, we don't want single-player games to have DRM that the developers can turn off and thus render the single-player games inactive anymore. This is what they want to change. They need to be specific that they're talking about single-player games that do not need a server to support them.
The campaign only asked the companies to let gamers play the game when the support ends, but for single-player games, it meant to request the publisher to keep selling games digitally, or let people who bought the game have access to it. This way, the developers wouldn't even have to do major changes or face any huge cost. The campaign got a lot of support from people generally, because older games were much harder to access legally, and it was because many retro games are entirely taken down both physically and digitally. This was why ROM websites became a major target of hate, as the games that were once hosted there were no longer available to purchase. And this is where Jason stepped into the argument. He publicly criticized the Stop Killing Games campaign, claiming its wording was too vague and could negatively affect live service multiplayer games as well. According to Jason, developers might eventually be forced to maintain private servers or face unrealistic demands after shutting down games. He basically argued that the campaign didn't fully understand how difficult game infrastructure could be.
Aside from that, the initiative does not purport live service games. It would just make it incredibly difficult to build said games and add a lot of risk to it, which is why I'm bringing all of this up and why I don't support the initiative in the first place. A lot of people don't realize that this will slowly diminish live service games in the market because it's not an incentive for us to build them anymore, which means you get less multiplayer live experiences. That sucks. I like live service games. I enjoy playing things like Final Fantasy XIV.
But many people felt Jason's complaints completely fell apart once real examples were brought into the discussion. One major example was Grand Theft Auto, the trilogy, the definitive edition, where Rockstar Games removed the original GTA trilogy from stores and replaced it with the newer definitive edition, a version many players strongly disliked because of its changes and technical issues. Some people argued licensing problems with the in-game music caused the removal, but critics pointed out that Rockstar could have simply removed or replaced the songs instead of deleting the original versions entirely. Jason also complained about the idea of private servers, saying it would place too much burden on developers. But once again, gamers pushed back immediately. People reminded him that private servers have existed since the 1990s, and many games already allow players to host their own servers without major issues.
Why would I play that? So why would you want to preserve a game in that state? That doesn't make any sense to me. You want to take down these live service games, put them up on a private server, and then play it with a couple of people. You're not bringing it back at its height. You're not taking a snapshot of what the game actually is. You're making it limp on in a way that doesn't make any sense. That's not preservation.
Because of this, many viewers started to feel that Jason was exaggerating the problem just to sound smarter or more knowledgeable than everyone else. To make everything even more ridiculous, he referred to Stop Killing Games as a government-run initiative. This argument confused many people, who couldn't decide if Jason was lying or telling the truth. But in reality, it was started by the public, and its representative was Daniel Ondruska, a European business consultant, not a government official. As a last resort, he even tried reading out details from the Stop Killing Games website during a stream to convince people he was rightfully calling it out. But in reality, he didn't know what he was talking about. He kept twisting the meaning of the campaign and presenting his own interpretation as fact, even when the website itself explained things pretty clearly.
On this initiative, under its own description, it says, this initiative calls to require publishers that sell or license video games to consumers in the European Union or related features and assets sold for video games they operate to leave said video games in a functional, playable state.
The situation became even weirder when Jason's livestream started receiving misleading comments. People insisted in the chat that Stop Killing Games actually wanted to turn all live service games into single-player games. And then, instead of verifying the claims first, Jason started acting weirdly. He crashed out angrily and became emotional on the stream. Jason had openly admitted that he had entirely dropped his mask, and gotten very aggressive about the whole situation.
It's used car salesman garbage. This is It's Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to. That is awful. That is a horrible goddamn direction. That's awful, dude.
However, his aggressiveness and whole drama against the Stop Killing games didn't really work out for him. After years of pushing the movement and fighting for game preservation, Ross Scott eventually saw major success with the campaign as he was finally able to sit in the European Parliament to describe his petition. The proposed bill by SKG will start to be implemented on all games published in California after January 1st, 2027. This takes us towards the end of this video. Jason Thor Hall spent years building his image of a genius developer, hacker, and industry veteran, which fell apart quickly when people started digging deeper into his past. At the end, we are only left with one question: how much of Pirate Software was actually real, and how much of it was just a character that Jason created for the internet? Share your thoughts in the comments below. There is a game called Schoolgirl Supervisor Saori Sato, a mystery game built by a solo developer named Peter Karusik, popularly known as No Way, who's most likely based in Germany, and might be a closeted Nazi, with a deep love for women's menstrual cycle, considering how it's a huge part of his game. Over the course of more than a decade, No Way used different identities in order to cover his tracks of depravity, because beneath the surface of his colorful game rated for 13-year-olds, one that pulled in over 1 million downloads, from a young, largely unsupervised audience between 2015 and 2022, No Way had built something that had no business being on a child's phone. There were characters displaying bondage kinks, and lots of head-uprooting rituals with suggestive sound designs. There are costume assets that he approved in his multiplayer game that bear a striking resemblance to the logo of the 3Ks, a very extreme, very violent group, and that is just what was inside the games themselves. Outside of them, No Way proudly uploaded clips of underage schoolgirls that he filmed without their consent while on vacation in Japan. And there are many other tales about his degenerate behavior. No Way was not famous enough for anyone to look into his case, and the obscurity protected him for a long time. But the truth is out now, and what follows will leave you baffled at every turn. Who exactly is No Way? How many games did he make? Which ones crossed the line? And by how much? Keep watching as we learn about one of the internet's most degenerate game developers. No Way's story of depravity begins with his game, Schoolgirl Supervisor Saori Sato, which was later rebranded into Schoolgirl Supervisor Wildlife. Its premise is an all-girls school called Sayama High School, and it follows a young girl named Saori Sato, who had just begun working as the school supervisor. Her job is practically like Ayuzawa Misaki's from the anime made Sama, a student president who oversees the affairs of her peers through a no-nonsense manner. Just like Misaki in the anime, Saori is also responsible for keeping the order in the school and protecting students from bullying, but she's not your average supervisor. Right from the start of her shift, Saori is handed a specific toolkit: handcuffs, handcuff keys, a roll of duct tape, a supervisor's handbook, a flashlight, and an optional blindfold. All these items aren't things a school student would need on a normal day, but in No Way's game, they serve weird purposes that would become very important as the game progresses. As Saori's shift continues, strange things happen. A locked room contains a girl named Akane Maki who is chained up wearing only a swimsuit. Akane is an important character at this juncture. She had been the previous supervisor, was a member of the school's photography club, and was also the leader of the swimming club, but nothing explains why she was tied up in chains in school. Regardless of what makes sense, Saori frees her, but this is where things get messy. Akane tricks her into a trust game, and suddenly Saori is the one locked in her room and tied up. Later on, Saori's friend and the school's Miss Popular girl, Midori Lin, finds her and releases her. They leave the scene together only to discover Akane Maki's decapitated body in a classroom. That is a genuinely compelling setup for a free mobile horror game. For the thousands of players who discovered it between the ages of 9 and 14, it was unlike anything else available at no cost on their phones. It felt eerie and specific. This was meant to be a school environment, yet beneath the facility sits a massive facility that functions as a hidden prison. Cells, isolation chambers, cages for containing students, surveillance rooms with one-way glass, a shower complex, and what the game labels an interrogation room are all part of the basement layout. Akane Maki's diary entries, which form a major piece of the game's backstory, explain exactly what this facility is used for. In one entry, she spoke about how she tried to punish a bullier by rejecting her apology and locking her up in handcuffs. I rejected her apology and locked her up in the jail. I requested higher security procedure because I wanted to make an example of incorrect behavior. Again, this isn't the usual disciplinary move you would see at a school, but it's the kind that worked for No Way in his anime game. Back to the story, Akane decided to be more forgiving and set this unknown bully free. However, the bully attacked her and provoked her further. This was where she revealed some layers of the torture mechanism used at the hidden basement. I tried to be gentle and forgiving, but that is over. When I'm done writing this, I go back to the basement in Building B, and I will put her into a straitjacket. I will go back to the basement level 1, and I will request moving her into the basement level 3, the total isolation chamber. And yes, chamber was misspelled because grammar isn't No Way's strong suit, and in case you're not versed with the term, here's a PG-rated breakdown. An isolation chamber is exactly what it sounds like. It's a space specifically designed to cut a person off completely from all human contact, sound, light, and external stimulation. However, this aesthetic doesn't blend well with No Way's game, because it's not the same one he had in mind. You see, isolation chambers have been used historically in prisons and psychiatric institutions as a form of punishment, and it is widely documented to cause serious psychological damage, particularly in young people. We can see that this one fits the description in Akane's story. The fact that No Way thought it was appropriate to include this as a casual gameplay feature, not as something the narrative frames as horrifying, but as a logical next step in the supervisor's discipline toolkit, says a great deal about his relationship with the concept of controlling and punishing young girls. And there's more. Akane mentioned something about electroshock therapy, even describing the intention behind subjecting the student to it. Then another entry she talked about the aftermath of the therapy, and it was pretty positive. After just 3 days, electroshock therapy, she sounded totally different. Her voice got more soft. Her attitude has totally changed. There was no eyes rolling, no suspicious coughing, laughing, or giggling when I said something. She sounded totally serious, and she was calm. She was ready to apology. She was ready to admit that she did do wrong things. Another entry describes covertly following the recently released student through the city while monitoring her remotely via a GPS tracker that Akane had requested to officials to be surgically implanted in the student's body. The tracker was necessary for Akane to check the student's body temperature for abnormal spikes in order to verify that the behavior modification was genuine rather than performed. These entries are not presented as the journal of a clearly monstrous villain that the game is asking the player to oppose and reject. They are written with a tone of clinical self-reflection, and they literally send a message that total bodily control over another person is a complicated administrative tactic, rather than a violation of basic human rights and dignity. There's no moment in the game where the narrative steps back and frames this as wrong. Nothing explains why there's a basement in school, or why electroshock therapy was even an option in the first place. Nothing about the game remotely leaves a disclaimer for players to not take them seriously. It only asks you to collect these diary pages as story clues and moves on. The world building of the school gives it an authoritarian government look. You can randomly waltz into a barricade made of barbed wires on the premises. Bloody scenes are a central part of the game, as you can work into classrooms or school grounds with red stains and puddles on the floor. In newer updates, there were kisses of death where players would kiss NPCs and they would essentially bleed out for some weird reason. And mind you, the kisses are nothing to write home about. The truth is, some people might not find anything about the features we discussed particularly disturbing. These mentions are far from the main problematic ones that No Way is known for. Horror games exist on the internet, but the thing about Schoolgirl supervisor Saori Sato is that it is marketed for kids as young as 13 years old. Initially it was rated for 16-year-olds. However, after receiving a strike for the sensitive nature of the game, No Way had to revise the age requirement to 18 years. But as further updates came out, the age limit bounced back to 13 and above. Keep in mind that this game has been published since 2015 on Google Play Store before it was taken down in 2017 on the App Store, which you'll probably find if you search it up. Many who grew up playing Schoolgirl Supervisor are adults now, but they've come to the realization that the game possesses a lot of problematic themes that shouldn't be exposed to young teens at all. One of these adults who try to spread awareness on the topic is the YouTuber called Ollie Ravioli. Ollie had hopped on the game when she was only 11 years old, so from July 2024, Ollie began to release a series of videos exposing Schoolgirl Supervisor and its developer for their disturbing qualities. And this publicity prompted the developer No Way to make a handful of changes to his public appearance. First of all, the number of featured channels on his page dropped from 4 to 2. For context, 2 of the initial 4 channels were his own, and that's Kurenai Games. One was a player account, and the last one was assumed to be No Way's alt account. What could have been hidden in these accounts that made him remove them from his collection of featured channels? We'll get into that in a moment. Another revision that No Way made in the wake of Ollie Ravioli's expose was the video count on his channel. No Way deleted some of his early videos from the official Schoolgirl AI Online Simulator YouTube channel, which for the record is the umbrella term for the Schoolgirl Supervisor franchise. The total video count on the channel dropped from over 380 videos to 70 videos, so you can have an idea of the kind of cleansing and hiding that had happened since July 2024. What did he have to hide? Well, the list is pretty long. You see, No Way had created a game filled with a lot of factors that hint at a lesbian fetish and BDSM. BDSM has absolutely no place in a game marketed to 13-year-olds, yet every structural element of Schoolgirl Supervisor points directly at it. And that's not even everything. Apart from the underground basement in the wildlife version, we also have the Schoolgirl AI version, which has an inbuilt club and a love motel. What school would have such installments in its world building? And it's more problematic because this is a game marketed to kids. In most multiplayer games, the default map is the one that loads automatically when you open the game. It is what every single player sees. the moment they log in, before they have chosen anything or gone anywhere. No Way built this map himself, and the map he chose to greet every player with, including every child who downloaded this game, because it looked like a fun anime school experience, includes a fully furnished club and a love hotel. In the club there's a dance stage with a pole and seating around it, plus a bar right beside it. Then the Love Motel comes, with double beds, heart-themed details, and various surfaces for sitting or sleeping. The space also features couple imagery, and is divided in 2 areas for lesbian couples and straight couples. You'd have to have a very wild imagination as a creator to come up with this kind of world building, and it's exactly why this subject matter is a very confusing person to uncover. What goes on in his mind? What is the essence of this kind of game? There isn't much information about the man named No Way. We only know his name today due to the connections built over time to his game. On the App Store, he is listed as Peter Korosik. On Google Play, the same person lists himself as Sergeant Sato. On the Saori Sato Patreon and Discord server, he is listed as No Way. Although the Patreon no longer exists today, probably to cover his tracks. Elsewhere he goes by Kurenai Games, Chibi Kurenai, and Minji Kim. These are 6 distinct names across 2 app stores, a YouTube channel, a Discord server, an Amino community, and social media accounts that have since been deleted or deactivated. Why would he need so many? Well, the simple answer is that he tried to hide his problematic self away from the internet's watchful eyes. That is, until Ollie exposed his masks. As of the moment, it is unclear whether No Way is Russian, German, or Korean if we want to take Minji Kim seriously. But based on voice recordings and archived travel videos, German language software settings visible in gameplay footage, and an address associated with Mannheim, Germany, the community broadly agrees that No Way is most likely a European man, who's almost certainly German. Google Play's own developer policies require accurate legal name and address information in developer accounts. Therefore, it's possible that there might be a hint of truth behind this location. Furthermore, Peter Korosik's YouTube travel channel named Mr. No Way showed him documenting trips to Japan and South Korea in English with a voice and phrasing consistent with a native European speaker who learned English as an additional language. In this description of this channel, we can catch a glimpse of a real-life human feeling behind the owner of the school game. No Way wrote, "Welcome to Mr. No Way's real-life travel channel. Yes, it's me, believe it or not, the one-man army behind the mobile game series of Schoolgirl Supervisor. I want to share on this channel some footages that I have experienced in my life." He listed a tally of the places he had traveled to, most of which are Japan and South Korea, but references to his voice from the videos posted on here places him as a European, so the name Minji Kim can be treated as either a fake name or one adopted for purposes unrelated to his actual identity. Google Play Store's own developer policies require accurate legal name and address information in developer accounts. Having multiple active accounts with different names and information belonging to the same person is a direct violation of that requirement, so it's possible that he's European based on the info provided on the Play Store. Also, we can judge from his accent in his travel videos. During a documented trip to Japan, footage showed him making condescending commentary about Japanese living conditions and residents. While filming Modest Housing, he made all sorts of degrading notes about living in that kind of structure, calling it poor and depressing.
Really poor. Don't even have a corridor. You have just the entrance and then you're inside your living room. Holy cow. That feels really depressed.
Similarly, when it came to observing that Japanese homes commonly use window blinds, he linked it to the country's mortality rate.
Which windows are not totally shielded. Like, each window has blinds, sometimes even opaque windows, then a fence in front of it, lots of trees that covers even more. Man. I mean, I don't think this is the main reason, but holy cow, now I understand why the rate is so high.
As if that wasn't insensitive enough, No Way stooped to an even lower level by filming women walking on the street at night while zooming in on their chests. Under Japan's Image Recording and Distribution Act, enacted in July 2023, filming a person in a manner without their consent carries a penalty of up to 3 years in prison or a fine of roughly $22,000 or £17,500. Uploading and distributing that footage publicly, which No Way did by posting it to YouTube, escalates that penalty to up to 5 years in prison or a fine of roughly $36,000 or 5 million in Japanese yen. And under Article 709 of Japan's Civil Code, every woman he pointed that camera at without consent has the independent right to sue him for damages on top of any criminal prosecution. No Way broke every rule pertaining to privacy in his travel videos, and he published them without so much as a second thought. From the way he sounded like he had zero understanding of Japanese architecture or the basic need for blinds in homes, it's possible he's not familiar with Asian culture as a whole. And his accent really doesn't set him up to be Korean either. Therefore, the argument that he's most likely European, specifically German, still stands. His travel vlogs didn't provide in-depth information about to the creator of Schoolgirl Supervisor, but it did give a hint of his nationality, and maybe even age, which might be late 30s and early 40s. Today, this travel channel is pretty much deserted, with all his videos either private or deleted, and his description has nothing linking him to Schoolgirl Supervisor, but still retains the same travel history as before. YouTuber Ollie's documentary really did a number on him, and it's obvious that No Way was trying to cover his internet tracks, even though it's very futile now that his digital footprints are all over the place. Regardless of the exposition, No Way's track record can be quite confusing for the average internet sleuth to figure out, especially if they're not familiar with the lore and history behind his games. This is why there are Reddit discussions, where community members genuinely tried to figure out who's who. Schoolgirl Supervisor Saori Sato is just one among other games created by No Way. The current and perhaps talked about version is the multiplayer Schoolgirl AI version, which is practically the face of No Way's YouTube channel. However, his disturbing game developing history begins with the Schoolgirl Supervisor version we initially talked about, and it got progressively worse than Akani's murder mystery arc. In earlier versions of Schoolgirl Supervisor, specifically the builds known as Wildlife and JP/Yandere Schoolgirls, you could do all sorts of things. You could change your player's outfit and interact with other NPCs and players. And these were the only normal aspects of the game. Your avatar, Saori, was almost high maintenance. Not because she was built to spend money, but because you as the controller had to cater to a lot of demands. This included food and drink supply, money, hygiene, supplements, and even special needs, like diamonds and surprise gifts. You'll find these events at the top right corner of the screen, along with many other features like Saori's possessions, which often included the same things we just mentioned plus cat food and bobby pins. The cat food is for her pet, which was called Pussycat Sora, which for some reason will follow her about even in school, and the bobby pins are not entirely defined, and various confusing gadgets of this nature will be included as the game progresses. There will be a lot of strange items used in this game, items that ordinarily shouldn't and wouldn't be found in a normal school. Speaking of strange items, here comes the wild one. The game has an inbuilt menstrual cycle mechanic. When you surf through the Conditions panel, you will discover a list of time-sensitive necessities that you must meet throughout the course of the game. These include food and toilet for Cat Sora, and a similar list for Saori Sato. You have to monitor her hunger, thirst, thrill, toilet, and feminine hygiene. But there's a disturbing addition here, and that's the slot for menstrual cycle. That is to say, you as a player must manage Saori Sato's period by making sure she has access to tampons. If you fail to do this, the character would visibly bleed from between her legs. This is very strange, because which mature and self-respecting game developer would embed a menstrual bleeding animation in a school game aimed at teenagers? This obviously reflected some weird fetish that No Way had been projecting in the early versions. The bleeding animation lasted several updated versions later, and the fixation behind it became more apparent as time passed. In current versions of the game, one of the player's first tasks is collecting a box of tampons from the home bathroom as part of the Get Ready for School quest, and that quest is still present in the game today. You grab your tampons even before a bottle of water and books because, for some sick reason, it's so important to No Way. And you don't monitor only Saori's menstrual cycle. In later updates, No Way added a scouter gadget worn on the eye. This gadget shows NPC status information, and also has an extension that displays a character's personal data. The way you unlock that extension involves speaking to a mentor named Eiko Masaoka, and providing a logical reason for needing to view other girls' period information. The game's accepted answer is that knowing a girl's period schedule is useful to check their temperature, because girls act moody when they are menstruating. These words would later come out from Saori Sato herself, meaning that you as the player would also state that you need the specs, because girls can be moody, so you need to know her day of the month in order to find more suitable words to handle the situation. Overall, that's such a random and nonsensical justification. to add to a game, and also force players to subscribe to it, because after this session, you'd be initiated into the act of checking the period cycle of every random NPC you stumble across. It's very intrinsic for the gameplay, and as we'll discover soon, No Way did have a motivation behind this game feature. It didn't stop with the Scouter glasses, however. There's also a quest where Miss Popular Girl, Midori Lin, urgently needs you to retrieve tampons from a blocked hallway bathroom. In the JP/Yandere Schoolgirls version, the character Fukumi requires a box of tampons before she will give the photography club approval the player needs. A math homework assignment contains a bonus question asking what dirty panty means, with the possible answers stating that you would either wash them or wear them. There's obviously a known fetish playing out in the game, not only with periods but also with panties. In the game, a character is shown to be very excited about a big secret she is about to share, and when she finally delivers it, her secret is that she is wearing a pink panty. That absolutely tells you that the creator of the game had lost the plot since the very beginning. In the same Get Ready for School feature, you have to find and assemble 2 pairs of underwear and other unnecessary stuff like vanishing cream. And all the while, you have Saori running around the house like a ninja from Naruto. It's pretty much the cliche Nike Girl setup, until you realize that the camera can often pan low enough to reveal the color of panties a character is wearing. In some case, you will be instructed to wear a specific set of panties, and would even have a step-by-step guide on how to set it up from your controller. We can see it in this particular case where an instructor named Yaekamon told Saori Sato to wear black panties along with her Scouter. Hello Saori, how can I help you? I am ready for my shift. It looked like you have gathered everything what you need for your first shift here at Sayama. Yes, Sensei. What you need now is the sign of authority. What do you mean, Sensei? Take this key and open your locker next to your desk. You will find a little surprise in there. Put on and come back to me. Furthermore, I'd like to see you wearing it together with the Sailor Summer Midnight black school uniform, and with matching black panties and black lens. That's an oddly specific instruction to program into a game for kids, from the period schedule to this panties fetish. These are messy and questionable details that wouldn't make sense coming from a male game developer. Now, menstrual cycles are normal, but no sensible game would make it a prominent feature for nonsensical reasons. Yes, it's an all-girls school built on an even stranger dominatrix and authoritarian setting, much like the anime prison school, but it doesn't mean that periods, tampons, and panties should be dominating and recurring features throughout. They pop up in quest objectives, mentor instructions, NPC dialogue, math homework, and status monitoring systems, and serve zero narrative purposes whatsoever. All it tells us is that the game is fixated on these things beyond any reasonable design decision, because No Way has an active imagination. These are features he would like to see in a school setting with teenagers. He also eliminated the concept of privacy by making it possible for players to see Saori Sato whenever she used the toilet. He made a panel where Saori Sato was drooling over the leg of a mannequin, saying, "It looks so real and juicy. I cannot stop looking at it." And just when you think it can't get any more disturbing, it does. The game's relationship with underwear goes significantly further than tampon quests. At some point in the game's development history, the school's official flag and logo were changed to a pair of panties. Then later on, the red color was changed to green. It should have been a meaning change, considering that the initial flag, written in black on a white circle against a red background, was a symbol that represents the kanji for rice. At first glance, it looked like the historical flag of Nazi Germany used before and up until the end of the Second World War. This is especially concerning because No Way has an address connected to Mannheim, Germany. Also, it doesn't help that the game features collectible armbands in multiple colors. But at the end of the day, there are no real connectors, and the Nazi underpinnings remain a speculation. The symbol can be taken as just another one of those disturbing attributes you would casually find in the game. It was eventually replaced with the green and white flag with the panty logo, which is usually hoisted alongside 2 other flags, one with loyalty and loyalty written on it, and another with cat images on them. And for the latter one, you can guess what a cat symbol indicates in this kind of game. These are not symbols that require interpretation. Underwear became the official symbol of the school. Even the students carried backpacks with the panty symbol on them, and it remained the central theme till the latest update. The loyalty point system icon was only updated to match. In the character customization menu, there are options for the panties your character can wear, including one specifically labeled Saori's panty. In the story mode, a quest called the Get Ready for School Replacement Panty quest requires the player to collect both a regular panty from a baby room and a G-string from an office. Neither item is mentioned or used in the story again after collection. They are simply collectible items that exist for no narrative reason. All these indicators reflect the main areas No Way's priorities lie. He didn't create a school where you can bond with other players sometimes and sometimes. He created something that could satisfy some hidden pleasures he felt within. It's possible that the self-gratification stems from his obsession with menstrual cycles and panties, or from a humiliation kink. For instance, like we've already established, the core gameplay of Schoolgirl Supervisor centers on using supervisor tools on other characters. These are the primary implements the game builds around. And in the multiplayer versions, all of these actions can be performed on real players. And here's the messy part. No Way built the punishments with suggestive sound designs. They sound as if they're deriving pleasure from it. The dialogue that accompanies the bondage mechanics is equally specific. When you bind Midori, who is also Saori Sato's love interest, and one of the emotionally central characters of the game, she claimed that she had found it exciting and added that she really liked Saori. Note that in this clip the roles were reversed, because now that she was in the same position, she could understand how wrong it might have felt to Midori, but No Way's programming basically expressed pleasure for the bondage, rather than guilt or feelings of betrayal. So, when you take a closer look at the choice of words and gameplay, it all hints at the game developer having a thing for BDSM. A school supervisor game does not need whips or moaning sound effects. It does not need a love interest who expresses excitement at being tied up. None of those things serve the mystery story that the game presents itself as telling. They serve something else entirely, and the fact that all of them ended up in a game for kids is a bold and deliberate move, not an accident of poor judgment. No Way knew what he was doing and did not care about how it would be perceived. To make matters more obvious, No Way added a body customization Nesmo system, which provided players with access to progressively larger chest size options over time. No Way promoted this feature in a YouTube video titled, "The new body types in this customization feature are nothing but big busts and small waists, the typical anime girly you would find in fetishization content." Now, having big busts is a natural thing for some ladies. It's biological and isn't shameful at all. However, in this context, it seems like more proof of No Way's likes and hidden desires. There's also a special edition called Schoolgirl Supervisor Saori Sato Special Edition, where you can get 2 skins for the main character. This version exists as an APK file locked behind a paid Patreon access code, and it isn't available on any app store, probably because it could be flagged for violations. No Way tends to hide problematic features about his games and himself whenever he sees fit. Just like the way he didn't upload the special edition for all to download freely, and like the way he shut down his Mr. No Way travel channel when he was called out. He has a habit of latching onto obscurity for his own safety. And it was in the course of doing something similar that he dug an even greater grave himself. No Way owned a Discord server where he could communicate with fans of his game and rub minds with them for future updates. But as innocent as this platform was meant to be, it quickly became one of the primary places on record where his behavior was documented most extensively and most clearly. The things he has said and shared in his own server to his own community constitute some of the most straightforwardly damning evidence about who he is. The content he shared were mostly linked videos of Japanese schoolgirls trying on revealing clothing. These are all fixations on women, which proves the point that he had been projecting his fantasies all along in the Schoolgirl Supervisor game. On another date, he shared screenshots of himself asking ChatGPT about lesbian activities captioned, "Thank God I have this useful tool. How else would I know?" These screenshots were made public through Ollie Ravioli, who had connections to the Discord server back when No Way was active. Him asking about lesbians pretty much confirms his hidden priorities while making the game. It could explain why he allowed intimacy in an all-girls school. No Way claims to personally review every uploaded asset before it goes live in the game, particularly Schoolgirl AI, which was programmed with a user-generated feature. For those who don't understand, here's a quick explanation. Schoolgirl AI allows players to upload their own custom assets. Things like hats, clothing, and skin textures, which other players can then use in the game. And No Way claimed that he personally reviews every single one of these assets before they go live. But this claim might just be false and unlikely, because he doesn't always have a clear-cut explanation for some of the questionable themes he has added to his game. For example, one approved asset was a white hood with circular eye holes cut out of it. If you're having trouble picturing it, think about what a white hood with eye holes looks like historically, and then ask yourself whether it more likely resembles a KKK hood. For those who don't know, this is a hate group from the late 1800s that is notorious for committing violent acts against marginalized communities. Now, why would a developer permit such a symbol in his game? The Nazi reference from the flags were already damning enough, and here he was yet again in another war of symbolism. The truth of the matter is that No Way either. When asked about it, the only excuse he could use in his defense was that it could be a Patrick in a ghost costume hat. At the end of the day, he did nothing about the asset, and players continued using it to portray Triple K members in the game. Another category of approved assets included strange skins, which are essentially designs that go over a character's body. Some of the textures made by some users depict scars, In a game with a predominantly young audience, approving custom skins that display graphic imagery is not a minor oversight. When a concerned player brought this to Noway's attention, he brushed it off, saying that it was harmless Halloween makeup. That was the full extent of his response. It's almost as if he was deliberately toying with the intelligence of everyone on his server, as if he regarded them as kids who would believe every word he said. He didn't leave any further review or even try to remove it from what we've seen so far. Noway is brazen. He doesn't see anything wrong in shaming Japanese architecture or sneakily filming women without their knowledge. He also sees nothing wrong in letting players run wild with his own customization feature in a game marketed for minors. As cowardly as he might seem with his habit of privating and deleting his content, he's still a very proud and dangerous person with no regards for morality. This is a man who stated plainly in his Discord server that he was planning to add explicit content to his remake, noting that the game won't make it to app stores because of how much it would violate platform policies. This proves that he's aware of the lines he's crossing with his games. The annoying part is that Noway is so full of himself that he wouldn't tolerate other people's opinions about him or his games. You see, Noway bans community members for giving him feedback about his game, and at the same time, he doesn't act on harassment reports about members who pose actual safety concerns. All he documents that when fans critiqued his remake designs, he snapped at them for lacking creativity, wiped the entire channel history, and announced that he wanted positive energy. In his YouTube comment sections, he insulted the fans of his game, calling them stupid feminists. When a female reviewer removed his game from the Play Store, he reportedly felt more annoyed by the gender of the reviewer than the fact that his game had been called out in the first place. Not caring for the reasons, he proceeded to call Google workers amateurs. After that, he boldly said, "Since this game is banned, I am free to develop anything I ever wanted." And then, he listed out the disturbing updates he would incorporate in his updates without restrictions. His server has written rules prohibiting offensive language, threatening behavior, explicit content, and inappropriate image sharing, yet he's guilty of every single one of them. Unfortunately for him, his complete disregard for his fans' feelings and opinions pushed them to investigate him, and they discovered another shocking detail in the process. If you recall, Noway had 4 featured channels on his main page, and after news of his degeneracy had spread, he downsized them to 2. This is because internet sleuths had made disturbing findings about one of the channels, the one named Kawaii Miki. Within the schoolgirl supervisor community, Kawaii Miku was a popular in-game player who appeared to be a young female fan making videos about the game. She had over 6,000 subscribers on her page and posted only schoolgirl supervisor content. However, there was reason to believe that Kawaii Miku was never a real separate person, but a fake account operated by Noway himself. The channel was created just a few months after his own, only ever posted content about his games, and the screen recordings in its videos showed the exact same German language software visible in Noway's own footage. Additionally, the unusual word lesbianism, which Noway used repeatedly in his own messages, also appeared in Kawaii Miku's videos, and the video titles and emoji styles matched his channels closely enough to Noway's style. The most damning piece of evidence came from a live stream where both accounts were supposedly playing together in the same server at the same time, except their characters never moved simultaneously. When one moved, the other stood completely still, taking turns, exactly the way one person switching between 2 accounts would behave. And then, during one Kawaii Miku live stream, an unmistakably male burp was caught on the recording. Noway had used the Kawaii Miku persona to promote his games, and also interact with his own fans under a false identity. As Kawaii Miku, he duct-taped other players in the game while saying things like, "That's the way I like it," and made both accounts perform the game's kiss animation together while apparently waiting for other players to join in. It's almost as if he did this to silently enjoy the thrill of his own game. This is in keeping with his reputation for being the internet's best chameleon, one that always tried to fit in and hide away when the going got tough. To make this whole drama even worse, the Kawaii Miku account was also involved in ongoing public drama with a real teenage player named Cookie-chan, with the 2 of them apparently competing for Noway's attention across multiple multiplayer sessions. If Kawaii Miku was Noway the entire time, then he was essentially running a fake teenage girl account to manufacture jealousy between that fake persona and a real teenage girl over himself. And things grew progressively worse as serious allegations became widespread amidst the Kawaii Miku investigations. The first allegation comes from a person named Ari, who submitted her account to a server called the Noway Reports Inbox, which had been created specifically to document concerns about Noway. She wrote, "I had worked on the game with Noway when I was 9, possibly younger. We communicated through Google Hangouts. I reached out first using his development email for Saori Sato. That being said, there is no way chat logs/screenshots will be provided in this report. This is all coming verbally, so you can choose to believe it or not." She described being a 9-year-old with unrestricted internet access, living through a from both parents, undiagnosed with ADHD and autism, with no real support system. Finding schoolgirl supervisor gave her an attachment, and reaching out through his development email connected her directly to No Way. Ari describes sharing personal trauma with him, including her early experience with menstruation, and the poor little girl had no idea how inappropriate the connection had been from the start. Not knowing how to communicate properly, I most definitely told No Way, which branched the idea of the character Midori Lin, her significance, her period, something that is very often shown in the game. There is no chat log or screenshot to work with, but the allegation is consistent with the game's content in specific ways. Midori Lin is tied to period mechanics, tampon collection, and bathroom quests throughout the game. Similarly, Akane Maki's stories about enduring a without resolution. Ari's allegations add weight to the question of No Way's thought process at the time of creating the game the way he did. It's strange how he placed a microscope on period cycles and tampons. With her account, it makes a lot of sense, but that's not the end of it. A second allegation came online once again, and this time it involved Cookie-chan, also known as Malibu. The allegation was first publicized on a TikTok account named Saori Sato Unhinged Developer. Cookie-chan was the same one who had been fighting for No Way's affection with Kawaii Miku. Cookie-chan was a young player that built a YouTube channel about the game, and became one of the community's more visible personalities between age 13 and 14. No Way, believed to be in his 30s or 40s, repeatedly reached out to her privately, included her in videos and live streams, and responded positively to fan comments speculating about a romantic connection between the two of them. After returning to the internet as a fresh 18-year-old adult and confirming ownership of her old YouTube channel, Cookie-chan or Malibu shared a portion of what she experienced. In one case, she mentioned how No Way had taken her to a secluded location while streaming. In one of his live streams, I remember he carried me to a bedroom between me and him back in 2020. That's also proof too. She acknowledged having additional evidence that she had since deleted from her Google Photos. But the lack of these photos didn't matter at the end of the day because No Way's sinking reputation gave strength to the allegations. Everyone had witnessed what a he was, and considering his entire game was based on high school girls, it made total sense that he had zero respect for minors. And just like that, No Way became a pariah in the same fandom he created. Schoolgirl Supervisor was the foundation of the problem, and Schoolgirl AI is where things got significantly worse. Multiple people who documented the game reported seeing explicit ads for adult-oriented games running in the ad spaces inside the game. These ads were visible to anyone playing, regardless of age. Every single one of these elements violates Google Play's own written policies. There are rules against fetish content, against misleading age ratings, against developers misrepresenting their identity and account information. These rules exist in writing, and No Way violated the rules in his two most popular games. Did he regret anything? Definitely not. In fact, he's even of the opinion that age restrictions are overrated, because he was able to play Resident Evil as a kid. His logic is, if he could do that, then there shouldn't be age restrictions for his game, where there's a lot of unnecessary Schoolgirl Supervisor can't even hold a candle to a horror game like Resident Evil, which is equipped with a proper story and lore. It's a classic survival horror saga with breathtakingly realistic visuals and gameplay, and you can't see any panels talking about menstrual cycles or panties. Yet No Way was trying to use his access to the game as a child to justify his desire to introduce kids to his game that had evolved through alarming stages of in over a decade. And the crazy part is that he never stopped to reevaluate himself or artistic choices. While all of his disturbing history was accumulating, No Way was claiming to be working on a full remake of Schoolgirl Supervisor. Progress clips from his Kurenai Games TikTok account gave the community a preview of where that remake was heading, and what they showed was disturbing enough that it generated a wave of documented negative reaction, even from his own followers. One clip showed both Midori and the character Misa held captive and depicted in the act of urinating. This footage was shared on his Discord with the message saying, "At everyone, are you all satisfied?" The majority of his community's reactions to that message were negative. The voiced command sequences from the remake, delivered through an AI-generated high-pitched female voice. No Way hasn't been active since 2024, and like we've discussed already, more than half of his videos have been pulled off his channels to hide his traces. His name is notoriously known for his fetishizing game, and even the last few updates have been met with great disappointment from some players online. However, there are others who are stoked regardless. And there have been updates within the community in recent times. A visual novel came out in February of 2026, and it appears that this new installment is keeping the fandom alive, even though it's a fan-made version of the Saori Sato lore. Same goes for the new Discord server called the Sayama Hall, where lovers of the Saori Sato Supervisor game still interact, share fan art, and talk about the lore of the game. It's important to note that this new server isn't anything like the one that was run by No Way. Unlike that one, which is now deleted, there are rules that must be strictly obeyed, and part of those rules is the one applying to common sense, where supporting No Way amounts to consequences. No Way isn't a member of this server, which proves that his period of digital isolation is still in motion. Regardless, the community spaces that have grown in his absence operate differently. There are real moderation standards now, and just like we've seen, rules applied to everyone equally, and supporting No Way is treated as a violation of those rules. His game is still niche and talked about today due to its nostalgia currency, but it doesn't mean that fans of Schoolgirl Supervisor are in support of the deranged developer behind it.